Good evening. This is the regular meeting of the Human Services Committee, and we have a quorum, though Alderman Fitz will be here in the next 10 minutes. The first item is approval of the minutes of the August 5th meeting. Could I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Are there any additions or deletions or whatever corrections to the minutes? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We're moving some things around a little bit on the agenda. The Township Assessor's Report will be moved down to the section under Township. So we're going to have first the police complaints. Are there anybody have any questions? Alderman Grover.
Madam Chair, do we simply move acceptance of the report?
Yes.
It's been so long since I've... All right, I move acceptance of our report from the citizens' complaints.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any questions on the report? Go ahead,
Yeah.
Alderman Breathwaite.
Just one quick question about the dog shooting. And I'm trying to find.
Turn your mic
Can you
on.
hear me now? I had a question regarding the situation with the police shooting the dog. I'm looking for it in my packet, and it just didn't look like there was any details about the investigation. It was just, I can find it.
Page 22 of our packet is where
Thank you.
the complaint, I'm sorry, 21 of our packet, Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you.
And then the report itself begins on page 23.
Yep.
I believe the Alderman is referenced CR 1304. Is that the one?
Yes.
And you want a little background on that one, sir?
Just a little background. Thank you.
Okay, that's a search warrant that was done in conjunction with the Cook County Drug and Gang Unit as well as Homeland Security. Upon entry, and yes, they did knock and announce, we always do.
Okay.
Upon entry, we encountered an aggressive pit bull.
Okay, thank
And the house was occupied 3 times, and yes, we did have to take the dog down to complete our search. That particular search, did you want to know what we got out of that or not necessary?
Only if you want to share.
We got 75 grams of cannabis, a pair of handcuffs, some keys, 7 plastic bags containing cannabis, 1 scale, a box of baggies, one bag wrapped rocks of cocaine, 9 blue pills, ID for proof of residence, a black BB gun, 7 cell phones, $1,040 USC. Productive search.
Are there any other questions? If not, it has been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Thank you, Commander.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take H4, because we're waiting for the city manager to come back before the other items. I'm sorry. Yeah, H4. And, good evening, Ms. Flack. Could you just this is just a matter of funding, is that correct?
Sure. Sarah Flax, Housing and Grants Administrator. Thank you, Chairman Holmes and members of the committee. What we're asking you to approve tonight is a minor reallocation of funding for the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. The reason for the difference in allocation is that when we got our actual grant announcement, the amount was approximately 24% less than we'd estimated last year when we had to do our action plan, and anything that's more than 10% requires an official substantial amendment to our plan. But basically the levels of what we're putting against which activities and the activities are the same as were in the action plan.
Absolutely. Okay. Can we get a motion? Alderman Grover.
Madam Chair, I move approval of $500,000 home grant to Connections for the Homeless for the 36-month tenant-based rental assistance program from September.
No, that's the wrong one. That is the
Oh,
one.
sorry.
Sorry,
That's
the confusion is
That's the
The
confusion.
addendum.
Yeah. Yeah, it's ESG. It's that grant. You got it?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, there was a addendum to the agenda. I'm sorry, Deputy City Manager Joe McRae.
Is that by email?
Yes.
Yes,
think
it
I
was
did
by
that,
email,
yeah.
and I do have print copies, which I'll send around right now if you like.
I'll move that.
Okay, all right. It's been moved in second. Anybody have any questions on it?
Oh, thank you.
You didn't get a chance to look at it.
And my apologies for the mix-up.
Okay. Is there any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then we're going to take H5, ordinance 80-0-13. That is the electronic cigarette and liquid nicotine. Director Thomas, Thomas Smith, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Good evening, Human Services Committee, Madam Chair, Alderman Holmes. Staff is asking for your approval of Ordinance 80-013, which is amending Title III, Chapter 14. It is amending and adding the language to restrict the use of electronic cigarettes and liquid nicotine, amending our Evanston Clean Air Act. Currently, the ordinance does not reflect a definition of smoking materials or tobacco products which are inclusive of the electronic cigarettes.
Okay, all right, Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Thomas Smith. I just want to bring to the committee's attention, I think it was a couple weeks ago, that Governor Quinn signed into law a bill that will prohibit the use of electronic cigarettes in Illinois by those younger than 18. And there have been similar bans passed by the city of Boston and Duluth and so forth. So we always think we're ahead of the game in Evanston. But thank you, Director Thomas Smith, for bringing this to our attention. And we can get this done and kind of align with other municipalities that are doing this as well.
Absolutely. Any other
I'll move
comment?
approval, by the way.
Okay. It's been moved in second. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only concern that I have about this is that I know there is research ongoing that would create what is actually a safe cigarette, and I'm reluctant to put anything in place that would discourage that type of research. And I'm a little concerned that we're running too fast with this. I absolutely agree that children under the age of 18 should not have smoking materials of any kind. I'm horrified about the addition of friendly, fruity flavors to these things that make them sort of an entree addiction for our young people. But I'm not at the point yet where I feel entirely comfortable about a blanket restriction. Can you discuss anything about the ongoing research?
You know, I at this time have no knowledge of that research, so I'm not familiar with it. But what we're asking is that the current ordinance does not include language defining electronic cigarettes, and so we're asking to amend the ordinance to represent the definition as a tobacco product.
Okay, but electronic cigarettes may not in the future be a tobacco product. That's
Currently,
where I feel.
electronic cigarettes that are being manufactured today are a device that does release vapor that contains liquid nicotine. And so I don't know the future research that you
Well, the research is
referencing.
ongoing, and I mean, you can Google it.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're not discouraging anyone from the development of a non-nicotine, truly safe cigarette by putting it under the broad label of e-cigarette.
I see.
Alderman Grover.
I think what we're looking to do with this ordinance is require those selling it to be licensed and then also prohibit the sale to those under the age of 18.
That is correct.
So perhaps we can send this up to council and then in the meantime collect more information about where these bans have been passed other reasonable municipalities, and also kind of what the state of the research is. I think we may all agree that I saw research too that showed that there are still carcinogens being delivered via these electronic cigarettes as
That
well
is
as
correct.
nicotine.
That is correct.
But
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, the ordinance, if you look at page 158 of your packet, under the definitions, our current definition of electronic cigarette specifically talks to providing a gas derived from liquid nicotine. So I think in order to address Alderman Fisk's concern, if there were changes to that definition over time, we could come back if there were electronic cigarettes that did not have a gas created by liquid nicotine. We could then amend that as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? It's been moved and second. All in favor of sending this on up to council?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now we'll go back to, since our city manager is here now, we'll go back and do H2. And our city manager, before you come up, we have several people who would like to speak to this item, just in case you guys thought I forgot citizens' comment. I didn't. We have first Mr. Herb Harms, I believe it is, and then we have Barbara James. We have Maggie Weiss. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's Noyes. And then we have Linda, and I think it's DAMAS. I'm sorry? Let me check. Okay, let me check. Those are the three people that we have signed up to speak for Hardy Clock. So if you come up in that order, we'd appreciate it. Go ahead. Would you please state your name and address? Thank you.
Yes, my name is Herb Harms, and I live at 2133 Crawford in Evanston. And actually, the reason I'm here is, as far as the mansion, Hardy Clark Mansion, I think it should be taken down. In other words, it was designed to be used as a residential place. Of course, we all know that. All right, so of course it's in terrible condition. We know that, and I don't think it would be wise to try to make it from a residential into a public use. It wasn't designed that way in the first place. So I think it'd be kind of foolish, and I think it should be taken down, and something should be put there with a better use for the general public, as far as the lakefront park use. I think we're talking about from children to old folks and everybody. We could maybe have a nice a deck out there. You're kind of like in a nice little elevation there. You have maybe a nice a deck out there, like they have up in Glencoe. Have you ever seen that up there? You got a nice deck where people can sit out there. It's up on a little bluff like we have, and people can sit out there and enjoy the view. And then we can have a building there with not even that big, not as big as the mansion, and have it for use more for public use in all different manners. And I think we could come up with a lot of good ideas for that. And not only that, we really need more parking there. And if we take down the garage, part of the mansion stuff there, take the garage down, we'll have we could put maybe 50, 60 parking area there, 50, 60 cars or something, which would be very helpful, because there's more and more people, more and more young people in North Evanston, as we know, and all over Evanston, and more people are going to the beach, and there's very little parking there. The parking is pretty rough around there. It's pretty restricted, the parking all around the neighborhood. So we need a little bit more parking, at the property, at the beach front property, in my opinion. So if we take the garage down, it would help. We could use that space for parking there. So that's all I have to say about it. I just think it'd be better if it was taken down. It's really a junky old building, and not only that, we could probably sell a lot of that stuff. There's old-fashioned gutters on there. They're all copper. There's all kinds of things we could probably sell. So you know, there's a lot of junk people that buy a lot of stuff like that. So maybe we get part of the wrecking money back from selling some of that stuff. Anyway, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Janes, and I live at 802 Colfax. Members of the Human Services Committee, I am one of the co-founders of No Park Sale. My comments tonight relate to the information sent to you by City Manager Bomkowitz in your committee packets. According to Mr. Bomkowitz's memo, he is asking you to authorize spending $170,000 to upgrade the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection system of Harley Clark. But since we don't know what the use of Harley Clark is going to be, I would encourage you to, while that needs to be done, there's no question about that, but do what the basic needs and probably to meet the needs of the Art Center, because we don't know what standards that mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire safety has to be for a particular use. However, as the city manager also notes in his memorandum, these things should have been done by the Art Center according to its lease. Is there any way that the city could get the Evanston Art Center to contribute to these costs at Harley Clark? I would encourage you to attempt to work out an agreement with the Art Center to cover some of those costs, especially if they plan to remain at Harley Clark for the next few years. If any new lease is negotiated, which is also sort of implied in the memo, then it is imperative that the city insists that the Art Center do what they are supposed to do to keep the building in good shape. If both sides had lived up to the responsibilities, probably none of this brouhaha would have started in the first place. On another point, we do not need at this time to spend $50,000 to $100,000 of our tax money to hire a consultant to explore potential for future uses of the building. It would seem to us that it would make much more sense to allow the citizens to come up with proposed future public uses before money is spent to explore what needs to be done with the building to meet the needs of what the building could become. That would be $50,000 to $100,000 that could be spent on rehabbing the building. As you know, No Park Sale is holding its first community meeting this Wednesday, September 18th, 7 p.m., upstairs in the Parasol Room, to gather ideas for future public uses of the Harley Clark building that would fit within the zoning code and the lakefront and comprehensive plans. This will likely be the first of many meetings. Out of this process, we envision coming up with ideas that we all can agree on. Give the process a chance. As you know, the people from all corners of Evanston care very much about what happens at Lighthouse Landing Park. We and you need to listen to them. They have spoken loudly and clearly that parks are for people and not for sale. We have one lakefront that is for everyone, and we expect you, members of the City Council, to listen to your constituents about what they want along their lakefront. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Linda Damashek, 1318 Judson, and I wanted to speak this evening in regards to an item in the packet related to Harley Clark, where the city manager is asking you to think about parameters for future uses of the mansion. And so I just wanted to encourage you all to be very mindful of the parameters that already exist. One of them, of course, is the zoning ordinance, which determines that it should be open space. And things that are compatible with open space. The comprehensive plan talks about enhancing lakefront parks, recognizing their importance for Evanston's distinct quality of life. But perhaps even most importantly for this particular juncture is the lakefront master plan. And the city hired a consultant, spent a lot of money, spent a lot of citizens' time coming up with the lakefront master plan, which is to guide future decisions. So at the juncture that we're finding ourselves, the lakefront master plan specifically talked about no private commercial uses to be proposed, and mentioned minor public commercial uses, such as a small concession stand, something like that. The fact that consultants were hired and public funds were expended and citizens donated their time to coming up with this framework for future decision-making, I think it's really important for the integrity of the process that you really use these as your parameters. And to respect them and to make your decisions completely in accordance with what they set forth. We believe that the mansion should be used for public use and believe that all these documents support that decision. And as was mentioned, there'll be a meeting tomorrow evening where we are inviting everyone to come and give their opinions on the uses that they would like to see best. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, that completes citizens' comments for Hardy Clark. So, Mr. City Manager.
Alderman Holmes? May I just,
Alderman Fisk.
may I just ask a quick question? Ms. Damachek said the meeting was tomorrow night, and Ms.
It's
James
Wednesday.
said Wednesday. Okay. so
Yes,
Wednesday.
it is Wednesday evening.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. I'm here to talk with you about the Harley Clark Mansion. As you well know, this has been a point of discussion with the council for some time. On July 21 of this year, the council declined to pursue a proposal for an alternate use of the Harley Clark Mansion and directed me to develop a plan for next steps on the future use of the property. In looking at the next steps, it really kind of fits into a couple different categories, which I'd like to talk about this evening. The first category is that there's currently occupancy in the building. The Evanston Arts Center has been at that facility for some time. They are currently operating under a lease that was agreed to in 1996, a copy of which is included in the packet this evening. My first priority, and I think the city's first priority, is that there is current use in that building, and we need to be mindful of the safety of those occupants. And if there's going to be continued use of the building by the Evanston Arts Center, I believe that there is a minimum of improvements that need to be made in order for that use to continue. In addition, we'll talk a little bit about what next steps might be as far as looking at other options. I also believe that it's important for the City Council to set some parameters as to what you believe makes sense to go forward with the building, but also to have a clear understanding of what other issues are with the building. The $170,000 that is detailed in the staff report are what we believe are the minimum occupancy improvements in order for continued safe use with the current use, which is the Evanston Arts Center. The additional funds up to $100,000 would be to look at the rest of the building. As I know many of you are aware, through the process with the Tawani group and Colonel Pritzker, there was extensive studies done. So we have a lot of that work done. Our Public Works Department and Community Development Department have not yet gone through all those reports. We believe that a complete evaluation can be significantly less than $100,000, but until we go through all of those reports very carefully, we really won't know what the holes are. So this evening, I'm asking you to allow us to move forward with expenditures up to $270,000, approximately $170,000 for basic life safety improvements to the building, and then up to another $100,000 for additional study. In your packet this evening is a memorandum that was prepared by our community development and public works staff. There actually, I believe, are two copies of that in your packet. The first of which is on page 53, which talks about the process that they went through looking at the report that was done in 2012 by a local architectural firm. We believe that largely those findings from 2012 remain valid. Again, we've gone through that and looked very specifically at 4 areas: the upgrade of the electrical distribution system, the upgrade of the existing fire alarm system, improvements of ventilation, and some plumbing improvements. We feel that those are the basic improvements that need to be made. Secondarily, there is the continued use by the Evanston Arts Center of kilns at the site, and we believe that if the Arts Center is going to continue there for any length of time, that a discussion needs to be made to better understand the use of those kilns and to perhaps work with them for this continuance of the use of the kilns. Again, when looking at the fragile nature of the building, I think our sense, without additional conversation with the Evanston Arts Center, is that the operation of the kilns could potentially cause a hazard. So that is the first part of what we're here to talk about this evening. The second part is to take a step back to, again, talk about where we are with the Evanston Arts Center. As I mentioned, there's a 1996 lease with the Arts Center. That lease outlines responsibilities for maintenance not only on behalf of the city but on behalf of the Arts Center. There was a commitment in the lease that in the first 10 years of the lease, or by 2006, that there would be electrical and ventilation improvements. In talking with the staff of the Evanston Arts Center and city staff, we've been able to identify some of the electrical improvements that were made. I think it's our sense that that's not the complete bid of
Alderman Burst, can you wait, or your question? Oh, okay.
It's up to the chair, ma'am.
I just wanted you to get to the end, but I just saw your light. I'm sorry, I just saw your light. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So there are issues regarding the maintenance of the building that are contained in the lease, and would certainly be happy to talk more about them. I think regardless if we make the investment now or don't make the investment now, I think a discussion is appropriate with the Evanston Arts Center on the future moving forward. We have had discussions with the Arts Center over the last couple of years during the process that we have just concluded. They've indicated a desire to leave the facility and move to another facility that would meet their needs better. I don't believe, have been able to identify a location that does that, but I think as we move forward, it would make sense to revisit those discussions and try to come up with a conclusion either for the end of the tenancy of the Evanston Arts Center at the building, or if it's going to continue, to have a very clear understanding about improvements that would be made and who would be funding those improvements. The last piece of my report talks about next steps, that if the building is going to remain, if it's going to have a tenant other than the Evanston Arts Center, what kind of tenant should it be, and what are the criteria that would be used to evaluate any new tenants. And I've put forward a couple of those criteria here on page 56. Is the building or property available for sale, lease, or both? What future uses should be considered? Is the future use of the property tied only to the allowable uses under the current zoning, which is listed? Open space and the various allowable uses defined in the Lakefront Master Plan, and there's the appropriate excerpt attachment 4. Will the city participate financially in the capital improvement of the mansion, and if so, to what extent? We're talking about a minimum of $170,000 of what we view as very critical repairs right now. The dollar amounts to bring the building up to a point that would have any variety of additional uses certainly are many times that. And so I think it's important to have a sense of what those costs are before we would even think about additional uses. Also then, once the City Council sets parameter and criteria, I would encourage that we would have a tour. There have been many interested parties who would like to get into the building. In deference to the Arts Center, we have waited until such time that the council provides direction on next steps, but certainly we would want to have an opportunity for the public to visit the building, have some additional meetings, and then be able to bring those ideas. My recommendation is to bring them first to the Parks and Recreation Commission, to have them serve as your surrogate to go through the ideas, and then to come back to the Human Services Committee and make recommendations about future uses. So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, there's a whole variety of things at play here. Again, my first priority is making sure that the current use of the building is safe. And that if the building is going to be occupied in its current condition, I believe there are immediate improvements that need to be made. If the council would like to do something different, then I think we'll need to talk further with the Evanston Arts Center and find a way for them to vacate the property if we are not prepared at this point to make those minimum improvements. Again, I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Alderman Burris and then Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that. Mr. Bobkowitz, I believe that the 20 Foundation or the 20 Enterprises did a thorough evaluation. I believe spending between $100,000 to $150,000 of their own money to do an assessment. Is that correct?
We have a number of reports that they submitted. I don't know what the cost is, but certainly it was very extensive.
Okay, so they gave that to the city free of charge?
It was included in their submittal, yes.
Okay, so we know really what these serious issues are beyond just the report that you gave us was about minor life safety repairs, but did not include all the information that the 20 Enterprises put into their report, which includes lead-based paint issues and asbestos issues and radon issues and lead in the water issues. So my concern is the spending $270,000, which is really probably a huge underestimation of what it would cost just to bring it up to life safety issues. I'm not sure if you would really want your children in a place that has that much lead in it, and you have a lot of kids going there. So it's, again, it seems like a waste of money, and the Arts Center throughout the process has said that they were looking for a new space, and I believe that 20 Enterprises was willing to help them find a new space, and obviously that was rejected. So have we talked to the Arts Center about maybe using some of this money to help them relocate and help with rent with a new space? And I'm sure it wouldn't cost $270,000, and there'd be plenty of money left over for other youth arts programs, or I don't know, maybe some public safety issues. It just seems like, throwing money away to put money into a building that we know is not going to be exactly how it is now. Obviously, tearing it down or boarding it up is the most financially responsible thing to do. So have you heard from the Evanston Arts Center about helping them move?
Madam Chair, Alderman Burris, a couple questions raised. First, the Arts Center was in discussions with the 20 Foundation. They probably can speak to those discussions better than I can. Of the other issues in the building, city staff's not prepared this evening to talk about the impacts on those other issues on the use of the building. We feel at this point our most priority concerns are the electrical and the ventilation. There is lead paint, there is asbestos, there are lots of buildings in Evanston that have that. The real issue there is how it's contained and if adjustments need to be made, and we're not ready to talk this evening. We have not studied the reports that Colonel Pritzker's team has prepared. We believe there are probably some additional reports we would need to make. But clearly there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the building. But our first concern is if it's going to continue to be occupied, that the electrical, the ventilation issues are the #1 concern.
Who asked the Evanston Arts Center if they'd be willing to take our assistance to move?
We have talked over time about assisting them under the previous scenario that we were working at, and I hope that after the council concludes its discussions this evening, I would like to have an opportunity to take back to the Arts Center whatever the discussions have been this evening, whatever direction, to get a better understanding of where they are today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this needs to be broken down, as you said, City Manager, in pieces. And I think the first one is, what is the intention of the Arts Center? What is their desire? Do they wish to stay in the building? Do they wish to move? How would they finance a move? What's the obligation of the city to help them move? And that's information that obviously is going to play into our decision on how we move forward. I'd like to ask you, I have a number of other questions, but I'd like to ask you if you could comment on why you think what's happened in the past. What have we been doing since 1996? My read of the lease was that the folks at the Art Center were to put in $1,000 per year over the 25-year lease period.
And that is occurring.
And that is occurring. So that has been occurring since 1996.
That is correct.
Okay, that's wonderful. And that the city has actually done some work in the areas that they are obligated to do of plumbing, electric, and things like that. So
Mostly on an ad hoc basis, but yes, that is work that has continued over time.
Okay, so it's just not total disregard or abandonment of the building.
By either party. No,
By either party, yeah.
I think to characterize that from either the city's perspective or the Arts Center's perspective would be incorrect.
Right.
I think if you look at the world between 2006 and 2013, lots has happened.
Right.
There have been issues for the city with funding. There have been issues, I would imagine, with all nonprofits, and including the Evanston Arts Center with funding. So I think that from the city's perspective, we have been focused on other things. We have been talking about the Harley Clark Mansion now for a little over 2 years and have gone down a path that has just recently concluded. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm here before you again this evening, because this issue has not gone away, and it remains one that we need to address. But my hope is that we won't spend a lot of time documenting very precisely who did what to whom, or who didn't do what to whom, as the case may be, over the last several years, but instead focus on moving forward and making sure everyone's safe and that the future of the building is thoughtful
and I agree with that, and I'm very happy that the Arts Center has been following along and making the contributions that they've needed to make. The other questions that I've got for you to ask the Arts Center is, can they operate without kilns in the basement? I think pottery is a big deal to them if they chose to remain. How long would they choose to remain for? I guess I want to know a larger picture of what their plans are, but especially if they did move, what sort of financial request would they be making of the city to go to a new facility, and what are some options for facilities if we have them? I'm not sure I know that we do. So that's, I guess that's the information I would like to know right now. I'd rather not go to steps, 3 and 4 until we have a better sense from the Arts Center about what their intention is.
Sure. And just to add, Alderman Fisk, members of the committee, myself, our economic development team has been meeting pretty regularly over the last couple of years with the Arts Center about options. So I can speak to, they have been pursuing a variety of different buildings and locations throughout Evanston. So we have worked closely with them. We have provided assistance as appropriate. But I believe as we stand here this evening, they do not have a new home that they've identified.
Right. And we feel pretty confident that the $170,000 is something that would put us at least into a safe scenario with I'm sorry, $270,000.
Well, the additional $100,000 is what we believe would be a maximum for a full review of the building. As has been stated through the RFP process, that Tawani Enterprises provided a whole variety of reports which are done by very competent professionals. I think we've identified a couple of places where I think we would like some additional work done, just so that we have a complete picture. So we don't anticipate it would be that, but Director Suzette Robinson and her staff felt that rather to ask for the high number than to come back later and ask for additional dollars.
And do we have a number for demolition?
Yes. In talking with our building official, Jeff Murphy, he's done some standard calculations based on what we know about what's in the building, largely from the Tawani reports, and he estimates that it would be a cost of between $100,000 and $125,000 to demolish the building, and to do it in a way that's sensitive to materials that would be found in the building, lead, asbestos that would need to be properly contained to be taken away. We know, and certainly you and I have discussed about the value of some of the interior features to the building, exterior features to the building, so we would imagine there would be some offsetting cost to if those features were, as they were the building was dismantled, those were sold off. We don't have an estimate as to what that would be, but I would imagine that it would be, and then probably the tens of thousands of dollars, low tens of thousands of dollars at least, to help offset whatever costs for demolition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In addition to discussing with the Arts Center whether they could make do without an operational kiln. Perhaps even discuss in more detail some of the findings if they haven't already. I'm sure from this report, the engineering report from last year, can I assume that they've seen it and had a chance to digest it and what it means for their continued operations?
I don't know if they saw it when it
Right.
was originally released in 2012. Nora Dietrich, their executive director.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Let's have that conversation and see how hampered the Arts Center would be in continuing operations, given what we all know now about some of the life safety issues and operation of the kiln. I attended most of the Arts Center's press conference. Was it July or sometime in August? And they seemed really very sincere about their interest in finding space that would support their programming, and felt that at least it seemed to me at the press conference, felt that the Harley Clark Mansion was incompatible with how they wanted to grow their programming and build the Art Center. So I don't think there's a question of whether or not the Art Center intends to stay in the building in perpetuity. I think it's really a question of finding the right space and helping them transition to it. And what form that help takes, I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to raise the building altogether when we really don't know a couple things, whether it's reached its highest and best use and what that would be, and whether it's compatible with what the community wants or can use the space for, and whether that building can be part of a better public amenity, something that, as I've said before, would draw more residents to this location, something that would, I think, be a larger benefit to more people. Despite its kind of isolated location at the edge of Evanston. So I'd really like to explore that a little more with community help. We may be able to figure out what that is. And so I'm not ready to bring in the wrecking ball for the Harley Clark Mansion. I think it's premature. We don't have enough information yet. And then do you have an idea, Mr. Bobkowitz, about what particular areas we would be looking at focusing on in additional review of the building and its systems?
Well, I think Alderman Grover, members of the committee.
Because we do have a lot of information about life safety issues in the building. I'm just wondering what's missing. If you.
I think we want to look more carefully at structural issues. I think the roof, I think we can assume needs replacement. I think we want to know a little bit more about that. I think it really is the entire building that we still don't feel we have enough information on. We have a lot of information on, but we're not prepared to come to you and put dollar amounts to it at this point.
And the evaluation that the Tawani folks did for the Harley Clark Mansion as part of their proposal, is that part of the public record? Is that available for others to see?
Yes, it is. I'm not sure if it's on if all of that's on the website at this point. We'll double check.
We'll double check to
double
make sure
check,
it is.
yeah. And I know another data point on this about the costs involved in restoring or renovating the building would be some evaluation that the Beacon Academy did, for example, a couple of years ago when they brought in architects and did an estimate. And it was in upwards of $2.5 million, I think, to renovate it for a bare bones classroom structure. It just is another data point. So.
And the Tawani Foundation did reports that far exceeded anything.
Far exceeded that for their purpose.
That was
so
done by
you're right. It's Alderman Burris. It's significant funds that would need to be flowing towards this building to make it usable for a subsequent user after the Art Center. So hard questions here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly don't think that we should put money into Harley Clark at this time. But I also do think it's a building worth considering saving. I think it's a kind of a gem, not just on the outside, but the materials and the craftsmanship on the inside is something that can't be duplicated in this era, and it is truly a gem. So I think that I would like to help assist the Art Center in relocating. I think that aside from their goals, I think as a public safety measure, we need to do that. In terms of the kilns, I'm wondering if there's some way we can work with the vacancies at Noyes Cultural Arts Center. I know that's on the agenda tonight, but as a more immediate concern, getting the kilns out of the basement of Harley Clark would be certainly a very, very important and urgent thing. I'm wondering what it would cost just to, at that point, if we were to vacate the building, what it would cost to just secure it until something can be decided, whether it's to tear it down or to refurbish it or reuse it. You know, what would it take to keep it from catching fire, to keep it from leaking and causing more damage? What, you know, the bare minimum that it would take to just keep it standing in its current, like frozen in time, until we decide really what we want to do with it.
Certainly. Homayoun Peruz, our city engineer, is here. Perhaps he could give some broad numbers.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Homayoun Peruz, Assistant Director of Public Works. All of the improvement that was suggested here are for the purpose of building being occupied. If the doors were supposed to be closed, I believe the cost of securing it will be minimal. How much, I don't know.
So it would be, I think, all the things you would imagine, that it would be boarding up the building. It may require a perimeter fence of some sort to just keep people out. There's a lot of folks that come through that area. Sure. And so I think we would want to do everything we could not only to just seal it from a moisture and a wear and tear from the weather perspective, but also to keep people out of it. And I think that would be something we would have to think about. A standard chain link fence may not be the right solution. It might not be sturdy enough in order to keep people out of the building. So I think that would probably be something particular to this property that we would have to spend a little time thinking about, simply because of all the traffic that comes through the park area, the beach area there.
Okay, because certainly this money and any more money we can push toward recreational and arts programs, it needs to go to Noise Cultural Arts Center, Chandler Newburgh, Fleetwood Jourdain, and that, you know, I'm not even including Robert Crown because that's a whole other embarrassment, but we have so many things that we can use these funds for, so I think it's really important that we not invest in this until we are absolutely sure what the future is, and really concentrate on our existing buildings that we are also neglecting at this time. So I appreciate your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's really important to remember that I think I spoke to this at a previous meeting, but when the city acquired the property, it acquired the property to increase the amount of parkland that we have, not to acquire the house. And so the parkland to me comes first. The house is a landmark. It should be respected as a landmark. It's a beautiful house. Has not been obviously, the use of the house and the house itself are not compatible. As the gentleman said, it's not a residence anymore. The buttoning up the house, I think, is a little bit more complicated, given the fact that Ann McGuire's report spoke specifically of leaks and deterioration of the building. I think we're correct in looking at it as an attractive nuisance that might attract some problems. Yes, some problems. So we need to be very, very careful about that. But I think unless we consider know what the cost is for demolition, we don't have all the information, which is why I asked for that. I'm not sure I want to go full bore into task forces and putting money to that. I'd like to hear what comes out of the No Park Sale meeting on Wednesday. Hear a little bit about, because we haven't heard from the community at large very much, other than they don't want the land to be sold for private purposes. So we haven't heard what they've been investigating in terms of looking at other communities who have cultural institutions in similar properties. If those numbers don't work out for us and we look at these various sites and it's just not sustainable for Evanston, then we need to cross that bridge when we come to it. And I have my doubts, but I do want to encourage them to go ahead and provide us with that information. I would very much like to hear from the Arts Center Board about just their position at the moment about whether they are interested in staying or not staying, or how long they might be thinking about staying.
Ms. Lickerman's the board chair is here. Ms. Dietrich, the executive director.
this evening, so I'm assuming.
Well, city manager referred that they were here, and while
Well,
they're
they are
here,
here, but
it would be helpful to our
I saw
conversation.
them here, but I
Yeah,
just wondered.
yeah, I can't
Or I'm
say.
happy
they
to
wanted to
talk with
speak.
them between now and your next meeting.
I think that would be more appropriate, and they'd speak when they wanted to speak, I would assume. That would be my
That's your
assumption.
manager.
Alderman Grover wanted to speak. Alderman Fisk, after you.
Sure. On Fisk, are you done? Okay. A few years ago, I think within this last council, we spent money to shore up the coach house, the exterior of the coach house. Could you include that in the information we have? Because the property includes obviously more than just the mansion structure. We have a coach house that is, the exterior is now, I think, largely intact, although the building itself is vacant and has been for a number of years now. As precedent for, I think it's been fairly well maintained, even though not occupied.
The only other buildings then that the city, as I think many of you are aware, there's an additional parcel immediately adjacent to it that has the 2 fog houses, which the Parks Recreation Community Services Department uses, and I think they had come to you with issues regarding those buildings as well, which we have not addressed. So I don't want to muddy the waters here any further with facility issues, but those are also on the property. Or
And a garage and a greenhouse, and yeah, so there's a lot to this.
City Manager, just how I'm concerned about the liability of us as a city if we allow them to stay, knowing that these issues are there. I'm very concerned about that. And, so I'm wondering if, I'm sort of picking up on what Alderman Burst was, I think, talking about. I'm not sure how we can assist them. I know that there were plans before, but then after reading the lease, I'm not sure how much we need to get into that. But I'm very, very concerned about them staying in the building with the issues that we know are not safe for them. And how responsible are we in terms of doing that?
It's our property.
Absolutely. Alderman Brathwaite and then Alderman Burst.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes. I guess I'll just share my quick comments. About 3 months ago, we sat in the other room and went through a comprehensive list of all of our capital needs citywide. And I know the next couple of weeks we plan on taking a trip citywide to take a look at those. We've also asked staff to prepare additional information just so we're very wise with how we invest our dollars. My concern with looking at this $270 sort of Band-Aid solution is that we have no idea if it's going to, I guess it's just safe to say it's a kind of a short-term fix to a much bigger project. So I wouldn't be in favor of supporting $270 to put a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem. I do agree with Alderman Burst in terms of asking for additional information about the demolition. I think the $270,000 would be better spent assisting the Evanston Arts Center to move if that's their desire. I also share Alderman Holmes's concern if they were to remain in the building. So those are my comments.
Alderman Burst.
Oh, I forgot one issue previously. Have we received any ADA complaints on this building? And I know this came up, and Alderman Holmes, you probably remember this a few years ago with Fleetwood about the ADA issue. And if we do get a complaint about it, I don't think we can use any federal dollars or state dollars to do any programming in there because we clearly aren't meeting necessary requirements. And so if there's a complaint filed by someone in the community, what would be our liability then?
It's difficult in a hypothetical to understand exactly what that might be. I'm unaware of any complaints that were made, and I think part of the improvements that we have made, the smaller improvements have been to make sure that the building is as accessible as possible.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Bachwitz, you probably have a long list now of things to do in this regard. Could you also then add, and I like your recommendation of scheduling a tour of the property for interested parties, speaking of inaccessibility, but in a way that we can maximize participation. And I believe we've already been collecting input about the future and fate of the Harley Clark Mansion through our online tools.
We actually have not. We've been waiting for this discussion first.
All right,
I didn't want to presuppose the council's direction.
Well, let's open that up, and in addition to the meeting on Wednesday night, then use our online tools to solicit input about ideas for the Harley Clark Mansion, everything from take the house down to make it better, improve it better. So, and everything in between. So I think there's a large world in between. And I'm looking at your recommendations. I think that would be good. It's just to get some additional input and feedback. And I think you suggested a couple of community meetings.
And
As a follow-up, perhaps.
Alderman Grover, members of the committee, if I can make a suggestion based on the comments I've heard this evening, I think first and foremost we need to get a better sense of where the Evanston Arts Center is. If there's not the inclination to fund improvements, I'm very concerned about the current status of the building. And I would rather, my recommendation to the committee would be, let's get a handle on that first. We can certainly do the put up the mind mixer to have people provide additional ideas. That's certainly something we can do right away. But before we would do any more tours or other community meetings, it'd be my recommendation that we come to some understanding with the Evanston Arts Center, because I just think that is so far and above other issues we've been talking about this evening. So perhaps if I could come back at your next meeting, if not with a completely figured out plan, I'd like to keep this on as fast a track as possible so that we at least know where we're at with the Arts Center and the condition of the building. And then I think once we've, the council has made some decisions on that, then I think we can certainly embrace all the other issues. But until we have a plan that's a here and now plan, my recommendation would be to sort of hold off on some of these other initiatives.
That was sort of my reluctance to ask them to come up and speak tonight without knowing where they were. It would give them a chance also to think about where they want to be. Alderman Tindem.
Thank you. And I think, too, I know it was suggested that minimal cost for just keeping it stable if we were to board it up and keep it secure. But it sounds like there might be additional security concerns, according to Ms. Fisk. I would like to at least have that information being worked on, gathering that, what it would take in terms of dollars and actual, physically securing the building from outsiders, whether it's critters or people. But because I think, anything between starting to rehab it now and, tearing it down means putting it sort of in limbo.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. City Manager, you have enough?
I do. So we'll come back at the very least a status report at your next meeting. Fantastic.
Thank you. Okay. Back to H3. Is that correct, Mr. McGray? Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Okay. It's you again, Mr. City Manager. Downtown Arts Center, next step.
And I thank the committee for its indulgence this evening. There's a lot of important community issues on the agenda this evening, and another of those important issues is moving forward with continued examination of a downtown arts center. We've had a number of studies, a number of community conversations talking about the arts in Evanston over the last probably 2.5, 3 years if we go back to the first study that was done looking at the Varsity Theater, and then we were fortunate enough to get a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to broaden the scope. Certainly, in addition to the downtown, we have been looking at investments at Noyes. We've been looking at investments on Howard Street. So there's been a lot of discussion about where we're going with arts facilities. But through all these discussions, there has been one sort of common theme on the facility side, and that is a real interest in the community for the idea of a downtown arts center. Evanston has had these discussions previously. I think just prior to the construction of the facility in Skokie have been the most recent discussions. And I'm here this evening to ask the committee to recommend to the council that the council request the mayor to appoint a task force to focus on looking further at a downtown performing arts center. As I've mentioned, we know a fair amount about some of the issues through the reports that have been done. We know that there are interested arts organizations. We know that there are potential locations. We don't know if those locations are available. We don't know if those potential organizations would come to Evanston. We don't know how much it would take from the city government or other sources not only to construct such a facility but also to support the ongoing maintenance of it. So we probably know less than we actually know, but certainly from what we've heard from the community, there seems to be a great interest. And as I look as your city manager at the future of Evanston, the arts and performing arts in particular are going to continue to be a draw. The arts are our factory. The arts are our old orchard. The arts are our car auto row. People come to Evanston to experience a very high quality of life, and I think the performing arts particularly makes sense. If you look at our downtown, we couldn't be better situated for a performing arts center with existing constructed parking, with access to 2 rail lines, with access to a good bus service. So we have all of the things that communities around America dream about when looking at trying to revitalize a downtown, trying to justify the expense and the dream of a downtown performing arts center. We have many of those things already in place. So I think it's appropriate to go to the next step, to have a group of committed citizens come together working with staff to take us to the next level in this process and see what, answer some more additional questions, come back to you and continue this discussion. So the memo outlines some proposed next steps. Certainly, as you all well know, we do committees and task forces of all shapes and sizes and kinds and proportions, and who serves on them, who doesn't serve on them. In the memo, there's some ideas as to how this may work. I'm proposing a 9-member group that would probably be a mix of folks representing particular portions of the community as well as folks at large. Certainly, I think any kind of mix would work. My main reason coming before you is really the urgency to take the momentum that has begun, to take it to the next step to see if a downtown performing arts center in Evanston makes sense at this time. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, can we get a motion?
I'd like to move to recommend to the mayor to establish a task force with regarding to a downtown performing arts center.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved in second. I see no lights. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And just stay there, Mr. City Manager, because next is H6, the report on the Noise Cultural Arts. Oh, I'm sorry. No, let's have the citizens' comments first.
Great.
Okay, give you a break. We're going to begin with Linda Slavic, Virginia Nugent, Sam Fishkin, I believe it is, Bill Swimmerman. Okay, hi. Go ahead. Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Linda Slavic. I live at 1319 Greenwood in Evanston, and I'm the president of the Actors Gymnasium Board, and I'm here to speak about the noise center issue. The past 2 or 3 years of the noise discussion has been really frustrating for us, as we have had and still have a great deal of uncertainty about our future at Noise. We believe that our future is at Noise and in Evanston, where we have served the community for 18 years. We are a thriving organization with a $750,000 budget that continues to grow every year. All of our shows sell out, our classes are at capacity, and our summer class always has a long waiting list. Our community is really committed to our organization. We just raised $12,000 from our community of family and friends for scholarships so we can reach out to more kids in our community. We do need additional space as soon as possible to fill the growing need at Actors Gymnasium immediately. We hope our needs will be reviewed and invite members of the committee to come and view our space needs. In terms of Noise Center mission and plan for the future, I do hope that the committee will recommend that the Noise Tenants Association and Evanston Arts Council work in partnership with this committee to make the important decisions to ensure that we keep the arts and actors gym at Noise and in Evanston. We're hopeful after a number of discussions with many of our aldermen, thank you for speaking with us, many of you, that we can move forward and look forward to a stable future where we can continue to build our organization here in Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. Virginia?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Virginia Nugent. I'm a Chicago resident, but I speak with you this evening as the new Executive Director for the Actors Gymnasium. Thank you so much for allowing the time for these comments. The Actors Gymnasium supports the proposal to have the Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association determine the future sustainable use of the Noise Arts Centre. Moving into this process will accommodate many needs. The Evanston arts community will have input. The council could lessen its involvement in the day-to-day management of the building, but retain it as a city asset. This will potentially have a positive impact on the city budget. The arts community would continue to enjoy a multidisciplinary environment that enriches the neighbourhood and provides service to the community. The arts community will continue to act as an incubator by attracting the community to participate in the future life of the building. And the city will still approve the mission of the building and delegate its fulfilment to the Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association. In such a process, therefore, it would be the purview of the Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association to determine the balance of the performing arts and visual arts in the building. The performing arts organisations, Piven, Evanston's Children Choir and the Actors Gym among them, bring hundreds and hundreds of young people into the building, thereby incubating the artists, audience and citizens of the future. Allocation of specific spaces within the building would also be the purview of the Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association. 4 current tenants have long-standing requests to move within the building. 4 current tenants are also operating with either non- or partial leases. Long-term leases have a 60-day out. The ongoing uncertainty has already caused several organisations to leave the building. Finding new tenants should also be a function of the Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association. It would also be the purview of the Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association to determine administrative space use within the building. Community arts engagement doesn't happen without program staff. Performing arts organisations, especially those with strong education components, need to have their staff located where their programs operate. The benefits of the proposal to have Evanston Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association in charge of the future of the building are many and extend even beyond what I've outlined here. After all, it is the artists and the arts community who create a vibrant and invigorated art scene. Actors Gym is excited about a future that sees us with a secure tenancy.
Excuse me, can we have you to wrap it up? I've given you 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And continuing to operate within the diverse community of noise artists. We very much look forward to resolving this issue and continuing in partnership with our neighbours, the city and the Evanston arts community to propose an active, vibrant and sustainable model for the future use of the Noise Arts Centre. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Committee, my name is Sam Fishkin, 1420 Grove Street in Evanston. I'm a board member of the Actors Gymnasium and a parent of students that have been involved there for 15 years. The Actors Gym has grown steadily over the last 5 years, even in this economy. Our camps are full, our circus arts classes have wait lists, and we have increased our school educational programs that serve many of the District 65 schools here. To do this, we've increased the number of instructors, mentors, and marketing staff that we keep, and as You can see we've just this month welcomed our new executive director. We saw this growth coming. This is not something that just suddenly happened upon us, and we've been asking city staff since 2011 for additional space at the Noyes Center. Our request is not a reaction to Piven's earlier request to expand, and it's not a land grab reaction to their withdrawal. What we are trying to do is simply expand our office space there by 450 square feet. This is not a large amount, and there's a lot of empty space there. We would like, ideally, to get room 106, which is a multi-use room, and to move from our current 104. But we're willing to work with the Evanston Arts Council, the Tenants Association, and city staff in order to do what's best for all involved. We are willing to pay our fair share of rent, cover our lease improvement costs to optimize this new space, and we are not asking the city to contribute or loan us anything. We're just asking to lease us, even in the short term, unoccupied space. We're not trying to push anyone out, only trying to serve the hundreds of students and families that want to experience what the Actors Gym has to offer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You are. Hi.
Hi, I'm Bill Schwimmer. I live in the 4th Ward, and I'm here to express my support for the arts in general and Actors Gymnasium in particular. And, I want to echo the city manager's comments about the importance of arts to the community. I think he expressed it very eloquently. Evanston is all about the arts. I've lived here my whole life, and it's such an integral part of the, part of the fabric of life in Evanston. In particular, on Actors Gymnasium, at a time when there's so much concern about kids being sedentary and not getting enough exercise and just kind of sitting around, to have an organization like the Actors Gym, which combines, circus arts, it's all about, physical strength training, conditioning, combining that with theater, performance, acting, and so forth. To have an organization like that has thousands of kids and adults come through its classes and workshops, has a number of sold-out shows, I think is such an important asset to the community. And so I just want to encourage the city to continue to work with the Tenants Association Noyes, and in particular the Actors Gym, to make sure it's a viable facility, and that the organizations can continue to thrive. And that's really all I have to say. So thank you for your time. And I think you only mentioned us four, but I think there's a couple other people who want to speak.
I was
Okay,
calling
thank
for at a time, that's all. Next is Yolanda Vanderland. I think it's Larry Distasi, and Sarah Prepperman, and Maggie Weiss.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Yolanda Vanderlaan. I live at 1329 Monroe Street here in Evanston. And while I'm a recent addition to the Actors Gym Board, tonight I'm actually speaking to you as an Actors Gym parent, as it's been brought to my attention that in the course of looking at the plans for the Noyes Cultural Center, there may not be a future for the gym at the Noyes Center. I want to share my personal story. My family began its journey with the Actors Gym 15 years ago, when the gym was just starting out at the Noyes Cultural Center. My 19-year-old daughter began in gymnastics classes as a 4-year-old and went on to attend the summer camp programs and youth circus classes. My 15-year-old son also began as a 4-year-old. Today, he is an accomplished circus graduate of their youth and summer camp programs, a proud member of the Actors Gym teen and theater youth ensembles, a summer camp mentor, and an active adult class participant. To say that the Actors Gym has been an incubator, informative and transformative for both my son and his sister would be an understatement. Quite literally, the Actors Gym has been my son's home away from home and has fostered his growth in more ways than I can count. I can't begin to tell you how many times my husband Bob and I have looked at each other and expressed aloud to each other our deep gratitude for the gym and its presence in the life of our son and our family. Truthfully, The Actors Gym has been a godsend, and I don't know where we would be without it. Just as we have benefited tremendously from the Actors Gym, I know through my conversations with other Actors Gym patrons that there are many, many more people and families like ourselves. And I believe the gym's recent growth spurt speaks to these benefits as well. The Actors Gym is both life-enhancing and transformative. It is a vibrant arts community, and it has a unique place in the Noyes Cultural Center. As you begin to consider the future of the Noyes Center, please retain the Actors Gym as an integral part of the special arts community for the benefit of us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry?
Thank you so much, Chairperson Holmes, members of the committee. I'm Larry DeStassi. I live at 1111 Noyes Street. I'm co-artistic director of the Actors Gymnasium and vice president of the Noyes Tenants Association. And I want to thank all of you, members of the Human Services Committee, for your support of arts organizations and artists in the city of Evanston of all shapes and sizes. I truly appreciate your thoughtful consideration of the Noyes Center's issues over these past 2 years. I'm here today to weigh in on the continuing debate over the future of the Noyes Center. As you know, much has been said over the past few years about what the Noyes Center should and should not be. And now we are hearing new ideas from our city manager, specifically new criteria for tenancy. Unfortunately for me and the Actors Gymnasium, many of these suggestions are threatening to the Actors Gymnasium's livelihood, such as rejecting any future requests for administrative space, which we desperately need, and turning the Noyes Center into an arts incubator, a loaded term which defined in the document that I saw would only include small emerging organizations for a limited period of time. I hope that during the process of revisiting the mission of the Noyes Center in the coming months, I will have a chance to explain why this would be not only bad for the Actors Gymnasium, but also bad for the arts in Evanston in general. But my intention here today is not to talk about why I disagree with those ideas, but rather to talk about why I'm very excited about another new idea brewing that the Noyes Tenants Association step up to take over the management of the Noyes Center. I believe this could be extremely beneficial to the city, reducing expenditures and workload, as well as to the Noyes tenants, creating for them an environment in which to work and grow. As artists and arts administrators, we know well the demands and requirements of a life in the arts, and I believe we could do a wonderful job working in tandem with the Evanston Arts Council, making policy decisions for the future of the Noyes Center. The Noyes Center has been profitable for the city over the years, and we believe we can improve its profitability, renting out all available studios and reducing costs. I've run some initial figures based upon budget information supplied by Doug Gaynor. We will still need assistance from city staff to verify the accuracy and thoroughness of our budgetary information. I have some of that here for you today. I believe that not only will the city benefit financially from the self-management proposal, but the cultural impact of the Noyes Center's organizations and artists on the community as students and audience members will continue to flourish and grow in a healthy way. At the last Noyes Tenants Association meeting, there were excited discussions about new ideas like First Friday events, something like those that take place at the MCA downtown, and expanded art outreach programs. So I hope that you will consider this proposal as we develop it, the Noyes Tenants Association working with the Evanston Arts Council in the coming months. We also hope you will consider temporary leases for the empty studios. There are now 8 of them in total, which could be earning the city about $7,500 more per month, and which are needed desperately by tenants inside the Noyes Center and outside. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Sarah? No. Okay. Then Maggie, it's you.
Hi, good evening, Chair Holmes and everybody else. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to say on behalf of the Noyes Tenants Association that we really look forward to working together to create a vibrant center for the arts and also to really increase the community involvement and the opportunities at our location. We want to be an economic driver for the arts in Evanston. We would like council to know that we're developing ideas, which Larry DeStassi mentioned, including monthly open houses, Art in the Park Clothesline Arts Festival, many other things that we can detail at another time. I believe we can accommodate existing tenants whose needs have changed and find a fair allocation of space between studios and offices, and look forward to working with the city manager, Evanston Arts Council, and our Tenants Association to do that. During this transitional time, it's our hope that we can have a city presence in the building. We realize that may be something that we would like to evolve away from as a city, but we hope that during this time of transition, that might be something we could manage. I also wanted to mention that there's currently a new exhibit up, and we have an open house this Friday from 6 to 8 if anybody's interested in coming down and seeing some beautiful textile artwork by a group of national artists. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, City Manager, you're on again.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yet another issue that has been before you for quite some time, and that is the future of the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. I don't think I have to go into great detail, but as you well know, we were approached by the Piven Theater Workshop, an organization that has been here for a very long time, that has spent a lot of time really impacting the lives of young people in Evanston and surrounding communities for many, many years. They came to the City Council saying that they were growing, that they were doing exciting things, and that they wanted some additional space. And what then transpired was it's at times a very ugly process where existing tenants at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center raised a lot of issues regarding the appropriateness of that expansion. And as also you know, they ultimately decided to no longer to pursue that expansion. So that sets a backdrop for where we go next with the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. I think we heard much from the community through the discussions regarding the Piven Theater Workshop of a concern about what noise is and what types of arts activities occur there. I think there was a concern about organizations growing. There was a concern about how big they should be. I think that as you look around Evanston, I think of the Dance Center Evanston, an organization that is based at the Dempster Dodge Shopping Center that has grown on their own and serves lots and lots of folks throughout our community. They're not at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. They have made it on their own. And so I think one of the challenges we face as we go forward with discussions regarding the Noyes Cultural Arts Center is this question. You know, how big is too big? At what point does the Noyes Cultural Arts Center, become a place that really is a launching pad for arts organizations? And is it appropriate then at some juncture that those organizations that need additional office space, that need conference rooms, that need those sort of things, perhaps with no offense to the organization and the outstanding work that they do, perhaps noise is not the place for that. So before you on page 164 of your packet, I'm recommending that the City Council ask the Arts Council and the Noise Tenants Association to consider new criteria for tenancy at the center and return to you in February. The questions that get raised, the role of Evanston residency, again through the Piven Theater discussions, there were lots of questions. Should taxpayer dollars be subsidizing artists that don't reside here? I don't believe we ever settled that discussion, so I think it would be important for us to have that discussion. The balance between performing versus visual arts. There was a lot of discussion with the Piven proposal that perhaps bringing people to the Noyes Center in the evenings and on weekends was detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood because of traffic and because of the existing parking. So I think it's important to balance the performing arts, which may bring in, as you've heard from folks from the Actors Gym this evening, and certainly Next Theater brings in lots of folks. Is that something that the City Council would like to see continue at the Noyes Center, or is there a different mix that makes sense? The tenure of tenants. You have looked through the Piven discussion, the tenure of tenants. We have, I think, the Piven Theater Workshop over 20 years, Actors Gym over 18 years. I think Next has been there over 20 years. Long histories, long commitments to the community. But is that type of long tenancy the vision of the City Council and the community for the Noyes Center, or is there a mix? So I would hope that that's something that we can discuss moving forward. Rents. At what point, should there be rents that are the same for all tenants? Should there be a rent structure that encourages new, exciting young artists or young organizations? And if for those organizations that are there for a long time, should there be a sliding scale for that? The role of community service, again, another issue that came up during the PIVN discussions, a feeling that with that expansion there was not enough potentially community service going to be provided by PIVN, so should there be more community service tied with increasing space. The activity at the center, while many of the organizations and artists do outstanding work, you'd still be challenged to go to that facility on a regular basis and find people there. And I think, are there opportunities for us to change that mix so that it's a more vibrant space throughout the week and throughout the year? And then finally, this question of office space versus art space. Is this an arts office building? Is this a place for smaller organizations? Is it a place for artists? Maggie Weiss, who is the chair of the association, I often will refer to as sort of the model noise tenant. As an active artist, she's there pretty much every day doing what she does. She offers classes. It's a very active, vibrant work that she does there. Not every tenant at Noise currently can say that, either as certainly as a visual artist and even some of our performing arts organizations. So I think these are questions as we move forward. Certainly having the building be financially sustainable is a tremendous idea, but I think it's more important from my perspective that the facility be culturally vibrant, and I think we've been able to find grant money to do the roof repair that's ongoing right now. The City Council's allocated some additional dollars. So those are all questions that I'm recommending that the Council ask the Noise Tenants Association and the Arts Council to look at. If you'll recall, back in 2012, the City Council passed Resolution 39R12, which recognized the Noise Tenants Association. Currently, the Tenants Association is responsible for reviewing reports from tenants every 6 months, certifying their tenancy 24 hours per week, and community services provided by their lease agreement, to review requirements for community service of tenants annually, and make recommendations to the city for any additions or changes, to review subleases of tenants every 6 months, to review proposed annual operating budget for the center and proposed rental increases, review annual and 5-year capital improvement program for the center, work with the city on specific capital fundraising for facility-wide capital improvement projects, review applications of new tenants at Noise and make recommendations to the city on the suitability of new tenants, and to develop and implement marketing strategies. So those are all responsibilities that the City Council in June of 2012 has already delegated to the Tenants Association. So just as a reminder there.
Just a minute, City Manager, we have a slew of lights. Alderman Burris, Grover, and Tindem.
Thank you.
Mr. Bobkowitz, I think that your comment about Dance Evanston is a really good one, and a lot of food for thought there. My question is, do you know the legal entity of Dance Evanston, Actors Gymnasium, Next, and PIVN? Are they businesses or are they not-for-profits? And I can't remember during this whole discussion with Noise if we have had a breakdown of the percentage of tenants that are businesses versus the percentage of tenants that are not-for-profits versus the amount of space that the government entity takes up.
We have provided you that information in the past. We can certainly provide it to you again. I believe at this point there are individual artists there who are not nonprofits. Some of them may have some entity that I'm unfamiliar with. The larger performing arts organizations, I think, are all 501c3s. I believe so. There was one longtime tenant, and we'd be happy to get that. We have a spreadsheet that Mr. Corey has provided on a couple of other occasions. I don't think that that's a column on the spreadsheet, but we can certainly add it with additional information.
I just think that those are important distinctions to make sure that we are understanding if we are going to compare Dance Evanston to Actors Gymnasium, are we comparing apples to apples?
Sure. And Mr. Corey, I believe there are no other private. Mr. Arlen was the
Arlen was the only private, not a not-for-profit corporation at Noise. The Dance Center Evanston has two entities. The Dance Ensemble.
You need to speak on. We're on television.
Sure. The Dance Center Evanston, the Ensemble is a not-for-profit, but the Dance Center is a for-profit entity. So they have two corporate structures. Right.
And we'll provide, again, Mr. Corey's done a great spreadsheet. We'll just add a column to it and be able to have that for all the tenants at Noise. Did they answer your questions?
Mm-hmm. Alderman Grover.
Thank you. Has our Arts Council been part of the discussion so far regarding tenancies at Noise?
They have been to a certain degree. I regularly, becoming regularly, attend their meetings. They have on their agenda tomorrow evening the continued discussion of that. So that is something they have been involved in. With the City Council's passage of the resolution back in 2012, that was some additional responsibility that was given to the Tenants Association that had largely had resided with the Arts Council previously. So I think at this point it's a shared responsibility, and I think it would make sense as we go forward to more clearly delineate that. In talking with the chairs of the Arts Council, they would certainly like to more precisely define the roles, and you know, that's something I've committed to them to work with them on over the next while.
Because I think I like what the Arts Council would bring to that discussion, having the bigger picture of Evanston's arts ecosystem in mind as we, as the Tenants Association, the Arts Council then deliberate the best use of space there.
And that's my recommendation.
Yeah. Do we have a waiting list, Mr. Bobkowitz, for the space at Noyes? Because I was contacted just last week. I think I forwarded to you and then on to Mr. Corey an inquiry from another theater educational group from Chicago interested in coming to Evanston. And
certainly people approach us from time to time, and my hope is that list will be dusted off during these discussions, because one of the recommendations on the current space is that at least some of that be given to a new organization to help provide some additional new creativity to the space.
And have a better sense of what kind of traction the Arts Center is getting outside of its walls for other groups. It'd be good to know that. And those are my questions. Thank you. So anyway, it sounds like the Noyes Center is in transition, and I'm grateful to our anchor tenants for staying committed to the building and to the space, and to all of the tenants who are still there.
Right. Alderman Tennant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think having the Tenants Organization, Arts Council sort of turned loose on looking for a plan for the future, a roadmap, is the best idea possible. I think what they can come up with will be very creative. I think they'll surprise us, or maybe not surprise us, but I think it'll be. I think only they can really do a good job at that, because it is their own livelihood, it is their own passion, and I think that I'm excited about that possibility. I do worry a bit about the management proposal that Mr. DeStassi put forward. I'm not sure. To me, management includes not only just determining who rents there, but also who unclogs the toilet. So I think it's a big package, and I'm wondering, obviously the city maintains some responsibilities, but where the management would end with the tenants association or tenants group and the city's start, I would like to have a very strong understanding of the boundaries there. And secondly, I guess, since we are approaching October 1st, we've talked about additional leases for the unused space for October 1st through March 31st. Is that going to happen publicly, or will that just be a matter of the tenants group or city arts staff determining the proper use, or how will that be determined?
Well, unless I receive direction to the contrary from the committee this evening, I would ask Mr. McCrae and his staff to work with the Tenants Association to review pending requests of existing tenants for additional space, pending requests for new folks, and to come with a solution. In the staff report, there are a number of rooms that I'm recommending that we would move forward with immediately, 212, 217, 222, and 224, that 106 be left as a community room. I think that it gets a lot of use by multiple tenants, and at this point, my recommendation would be we go ahead and just leave it as that community room, and that we would leave the one space in the basement vacant. This building has structural and other issues, as does other buildings we've been discussing this evening, and I'd like an opportunity to get a better sense of where we are going there before we would fill the basement facility. So we would be making available 1, 2, 3, 4 rooms, and that's something I can do on my own. So as long as there's no objection, that would be the plan, and we would work to put folks in those rooms by October 1st.
Is space 106 the former Ken Arlen?
No, he was up on the second
floor. Oh, that's right. As far as the swap that the Actors Gym would like to do, I think it was a swap between 104 and 106. Is that a possibility, or is 106 really a specific designed or laid out with a specific use?
Well, again, it currently has a community use, and my sense in working with the tenants over the last couple of years is that it's a valued thing. And if there's an opportunity to make an adjustment, I guess I would look to the recommendation from the Tenants Association, and if that can be done, fine. But I think it's important to have that flexible space. Again, through the PIVN discussions, we heard loud and clear from the tenants the value of having that community space available that could be made available to other tenants as they need throughout the year. So I would not want to lose that. So we'll see what we can do. But clearly at this point, 212, 217, 222, and 224, we would move forward with to have a 6-month lease.
I think the idea of we're kind of in a middle stage now. We're a lot of growth, which is excellent. I am impressed by what the Actors Gym has done in just recent years. I am although a huge proponent of maintaining its minimal, sort of minimal office space and maximizing the visual arts space, because I think that is the best use for that building, the neighborhood, and everything. But given the fact that we're in transition and we have these organizations that are like the Actors Gym, which is blossoming, I think we should accommodate some temporary, they did say short term. I'm not sure what they meant by that, but I think there's reasons to look at some of this growth and helping them maintain it now. I'm curious about what they're doing with District 65 and all that kind of stuff. So, I'd also like to hopefully that the tenants ask them if they talk to the Evanston Arts Center about the kiln situation. I know that's a basement operation, I believe, at Noyes. Is there any way to include more immediately than anything at Noyes the operation of the kilns? Would that work for the Evanston Arts Center? These are questions I don't know and I haven't asked.
And again, I think your staff struggles with the state of the Noyes Center.
Right.
And so while there are industrial art uses in the basement that use different kinds of equipment, my recommendation at this point would not be to add additional types of kilns or something from one fragile city building to another fragile city building. But certainly we can talk, and if there's some middle ground, we'll certainly try to find it. I think by making these 4 rooms available, and again, my recommendation back to Mr. McCrae and the Tenants Association is to try to find some space for some new artists. I think, one of the challenges that I think the center has is a lot of very long-standing artists, and they run the gamut of what they do. They run the gamut of their contributions to the community. They run the gamut of their artistic output. You can't place them in one category. So my hope is that there's an opportunity to at least bring in one new artist, make some available, because certainly Actors Gym, while you've heard much from them this evening, there are other organizations that would like that space as well. So I would hope that the Tenants Association can try to listen to the conversation of the council committee this evening, weigh these issues, because again, one of my concerns, Alderman Tendam and members of the committee, is we've got lots of successful arts organizations. We had one in the PIVN Theater Workshop, and we heard from most of the other tenants saying that was too much. And my fear is that we will hear from another successful tenant before too long that they want additional space. I don't want to repeat what we've been through with PIVN because of another outstanding group. Then goes back to the Dance Center Evanston. I mean, there are other options for successful arts organizations other than the Noyes Cultural Arts Center, and I just want to make sure that as we're moving forward, a year from now, 2 years from now, we're not having this conversation with Next Theater or having this conversation with Actors Gymnasium or whoever else is being successful, because then all the other artists say, well, wait, that's going to take away from space I may need. And that's, I think, it's a little bit of an elephant in the room, and I mean to be no disrespect to any of the organizations, but this committee had gone through many hearings with the PIVN Theater Workshop and had many people here questioning, this whole question of balance and who's in the center. And I, as your city manager, would not recommend that you go back down that path anytime soon.
Right. No, I get it. I agree. I just think there's because there is a limit to I believe the size and weight of certain organization at PIVN. Like I said, the building, the neighborhood, parking, everything doesn't really lend itself to a large single organization that is going to require or attract a performing audience to see a performance. So I do think that's obviously a suggestion to these organizations like Next or Actors Gym to think long term. Even if in the short term we're able to accommodate some of their requests, they really need to think in terms of their growth, what's best for them, and the fact that Evanston, that Noise Cultural Arts Center should be a diverse, sort of even across the board representative of all the different arts disciplines, and not really be heavily geared toward one organization or one type of artist. So I think the tenants will do well in this. I think they have their best interests at heart, and I think they know that the vibrancy of the organization is what's going to keep it alive, what's going to attract people to a show on Friday night, was that? So I think that, obviously it's in their best interest to do some of these things we've talked about. Thank you.
I am Alderman Tindem. I find it exciting. I'm excited about the tenants organization and wanting to step forward and take some leadership. Excuse me. I think that's where we started out 2.5 years ago. And so that you want to pick up the ball now and do that, I am very excited about it. And I think that I hope you're listening to everyone in terms of looking at the space and making good decisions. It doesn't weigh one way or the other. I could care sort of less in terms of how you do that, but that you listen and make sure that we make fair and, equitable decisions across the board. Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of things to say on this. Again, I want to remind everyone the reason why we have this building was we acquired it to have the parkland, and the building came as a plus. The building actually has worked really well, and I think it has fit in with the community extraordinarily well over the years, from being a former school building to working as home for Evanston artists, supporting the parkland that's there that serves the community as the only public park really on the north end of the First Ward, to supporting the businesses on Noyes Street. Everything works on that street, and Alderman Holmes and I share Noyes Street, and it's an amazing community. I want to continue by saying that I'm sure, Mr. City Manager, as you said, you don't want to cast any aspersions on anyone for and any negative feelings that in anyone associated with this conversation. So I want to make sure that the conversation continues to be a positive one as we move forward. I'm very, very interested, Alderman Holmes, in hearing more about a self-sustainability model there. I do not want to micromanage the arts. Absolutely. I do not want to know when you're in your studio and when you're not in your studio, and who, whether you're selling or not selling. I want you all to be successful. I'm more than willing to hear more about how you see moving forward. I've been very impressed in the past with what you've said, especially Mr. DeStasi, your comments in various meetings previously about how a sustainability model can be in place, and how you seem to be conscious. As artists, I give you a lot of rein to be creative and free thinkers, but to have you testifying before the City Council with a clear understanding of the business aspect of this and the implications on the rest of the City of Evanston, your outreach in terms of what you're giving back to the community, I think are incredible. I've been absolutely pleased with the way that this building functions in the city and also in the First Ward. We're very lucky to have this institution functioning the way it does. It's really unusual, this building, and the tenants, they're paying their way. They've got some vacant space. Seems to be a turnover that and a willingness to listen to new ideas, new artists coming in. So it's not like we have a status quo that's just turned into a big, nothing ever changes at the center. The center is vibrant. The center is moving along. I'm very, very impressed with the commitment and the enthusiasm that the tenants organization has for the running of the center. And so I'd like to hear more about that, Mr. City Manager, if we can have you Arts Council sit down with the noise tenants and hear more about what they have to say and bring those numbers to us. Again, I would like to pull back. I don't want to be micromanaging centers like this. I wish we had more of them, and I think we can look at that. I also don't want to make folks feel uncomfortable that they have to be continuing to prove themselves. The fact that Actors Gym is attracting the numbers of people that it is incredible. It's incredible and extremely important for the business environment along Noyes Street. If you talk to anyone, you get your hair cut over there, you go to the deli, you go to the restaurants, you go to wherever you're going on Noyes Street, D&D, wherever, you'll hear how important it is for the numbers of people that are generated by the existing and long-term tenants that are in Noyes. And I just don't want to, jump off the diving board here without a real understanding of how this works in a holistic way in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm excited for the Tenants Association, that it hopefully puts the power to decide the course and future of the building in your hands, the tenants. I don't feel like we're micromanaging this process, Alderman Fisk, although I am a little concerned and at the same time confused by a couple of mixed messages that I'm hearing, and I would hope that before we send everybody out of the meeting, just to get some clarity from the city manager, I hear that the Tenants Association will be responsible for what looks like filling the vacant spaces, and that they'll come back to us. Is that October 1st? I also heard your recommendations that were in conflict with one of our anchor tenants and existing tenants, Actors Gymnasium. And so I just want to be, clear with those recommendations. It sounds like the floors that you are suggesting are all on the second floor, but the floor that they're requesting is on the first floor. And just so we're clear on who's going to make that decision, is that going to be your decision, or is that going to be the decision of the Tenants Association?
Alderman Braithwaite, members of the committee, the lease decisions have been the city's decisions. In the resolution that the council passed in 2012, it gives the authority to the Tenants Association to review applications and make recommendations.
Okay. Well, I mean, he answered the question. Yeah.
So as we seek direction from the Arts Council and the Tenants Association, what it may mean is that they disregard the good counsel of aldermen as to how to fill the space. And we have to be prepared to work with those recommendations and defer to their expertise on the building and how it's filled and so forth. So in the meantime, I'm glad we'll be securing some short-term leases for those vacant spaces.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I completely agree. And I'm just going to say once more, listen very carefully. Mm-hmm. Community space is important to everyone in that building, and I know that. And so when you think about 106, think about that. I know receptions are held there. All kinds of things happen in 106. So it has to be looked at. And so that's to the tenants, I'm saying look very carefully. I know sometimes we'd like to do one thing, but we need to do another. So I'm counting on you.
So Alderman Holmes, Chair Holmes, members of the committee, the recommendations then, and I think we've covered most of them regarding the Arts Council and the Tenants Association, consider new criteria for tenancy and return to the Human Services Committee in February. I think we've covered that piece. The second piece, the third piece is to direct. We haven't talked about the engineering evaluation. And again, this is a similar circumstance to the Noyes Cultural Arts Center. I'd like to move forward with a more complete evaluation of the building. There was some concern about asbestos in the basement. We've done some work as part of the PIVN discussions, but again, I have similar concerns with the building overall that I do with Harley Clark. The council was able to take a state grant that former Senator Schoenberg was able to get from the city, plus an additional $400,000 of taxpayer money from Evanston to redo the roof, and that project is underway. But I think we need to take a look at the full building. So what I'd like to do is at least get the committee's consent to move forward with that. If we need to come back for additional resources to complete that work, then we'll come back at another time.
Okay. I see two lights. I just one question. Mr. City Manager, in terms of the discussions that you'll ask Mr. McRae and the tenants to do, will that include reviewing the rents and all of that? That will include that. I just want to make sure, because I think that's very important. So that long list you gave us, that's what they'll be taking up.
So the first step would be immediately to address the vacant space. So that would happen,
right.
And Mr. McRae and his staff would work with the Tenants Association on that. So once that's then settled, would have then the balance of the year for those discussions to take place about some of these larger questions, and then to have the Tenants Association and the Arts Council come back to you in February of 2014 with some recommendations. And then I think back to Alderman Grover's point, then I think it's up to you to hear what has been said, and then decide if you want to either amend the resolution that authorizes the Tenants Association to make some changes now, whatever you might like to do as we move forward. But until then, we'll keep the status quo. The city will manage through the leases. We are looking to move city staff out of the building. There's been concern about that. We'll continue to talk with Mr. McRae and the Parks and Recreation staff. One of my hopes is that we can move a city arts program. We've talked a lot about other organizations this evening. We've not talked about the city's arts program. My concern is we're still not doing that citywide. And are there opportunities, perhaps by moving the staff that currently is responsible for those programs from the Noyes Center back here to the Civic Center, that might help with a more citywide focus, as well as freeing up space for additional artists. There's nothing magic about the city staff being there. I think especially if we're looking at a greater role for the Tenants Association, then that's probably less of a need for city staff to be there. But again, Mr. McRae and I will continue to talk about that. In the staff report, our goal is to have this completed by the end of the calendar year, but as it makes sense to make adjustments, we will. If it makes sense to hold off based on waiting for the report back from the Arts Council and the Tenants Association, we may very well do that. But it sounds like we're going in a direction, again, where the city of Evanston's cultural arts staff can be elsewhere. They don't need to be at the Noyes Center. If we're going to have private organizations, private individuals really taking the lead there, then the city staff can be elsewhere and do programming elsewhere.
Right. Alderman Grover and then Alderman Fisk.
Just a quick question. On October 26th, as part of our budget process, we're going to be visiting and reviewing a number of facilities. Is the Noyes Center on that list?
It will likely be. I don't know that we've finished the list.
I just wondered if you had already sketched out what's part of our plan for October 26th.
I'm sorry? We're still working on that. It may very well. I think we're trying to cover a lot of ground in just a few hours. So.
I know.
Right.
Thank you.
Alderman Fisk.
Yeah, thank you, Alderman Grover. That was my question, too. I want to be sure that as we talk about the various costs involved in maintaining the building, and that's also discussed with the tenants organization, so that they can work that into their numbers and see how they are going to deal with the various issues that the building might have over the years. If we look at the Harley Clark model, a city basically maintained the exterior and some large systems in the building, and the Arts Council was responsible for everything else on the interior. If that's the way, again, we construct this at Noyes, should we decide to go that way, I think this is the time to be talking about it so that we can go into the budget season with a better idea of whether this building is going to require a significant financial support from the city or a less significant financial support.
And
that's what we need. We need the engineering report then, so they would be able to give them that kind of information.
This is largely a capital cost. I think the operational costs of this building are pretty straightforward. but it's the capital cost, and who pays for the capital cost. This is something that the Tenants Association through their rent is paying for solely. Is it's a mix. At this point, we've spent almost $2 million on the building in the last 12, 18 months, so which is lots more than we have, and that's all from either city tax dollars or that's the state grant that we received for part of the roof.
Right, but I just want to make sure that we've got that by budget time. We've got at least some idea of.
And you won't. You won't have
okay.
it. So I think because we're about 80% done with the proposed operating budget. We're going to be talking with you 2 weeks from tonight regarding capital. So we will talk a little bit about the Noise Center and Harley Clark and other city facilities. But this will be something that will trail into 14 at this point.
All right.
But we do need to, if I'm correct, you need a motion, you need to move this on for the engineering piece. Is that correct, City Manager?
And I think if the committee would provide direction, I don't think it needs to go to the full council at this point.
Oh, okay.
If there's additional dollars required, then I'll come back. But my hope is that we can do this with existing forces
Okay.
at Noise.
All right.
Very good.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay. I'm moving right along. 8-7. So actually, we're not doing bad. Parks and Recreation Department, Lakefront Special Events Policy Recommendation. I think the chairman of the rec board is here, I think.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, we have with us the Park and Rec Board Chairman Dan Stein to answer any questions that you might have, as well as staff here regarding the lakefront use special events policy.
Alderman Grover.
I'll put it in motion with a motion to approve the recommendations from our Park and Recreation Board for special events policy for lakefront use in the 3-year pilot proposed.
I'll second.
It's been moved in second. Are there questions? I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. I guess you had him. I'm sorry, David Reynolds. You're the only one, David. Everything else was Harley Clark and Noise. I'm sorry I missed you.
Thank you very much. My name is David Reynolds. I live at 204 Davis Street. And in your consideration of this recommendation, I hope that you will give thought to two of the criteria that are proposed to be used to determine whether or not an event is a high-impact event. The first one I would like you to give some thought to is the duration of the event. It's listed as greater than 3 hours. Is one of the things that makes it a high-impact event, but there's no consideration of whether or not it's a 2-day event. Obviously, much longer than 3 hours, and I believe that if it is a 2-day event, it should count as 2 separate high-impact events. The other criteria is amplification. Amplification is the one thing that that park goers can't get away from at a special event. They can move away from it physically and enjoy themselves, but they cannot get away from the amplification. I wish you would consider either making amplification a double criteria, giving it more weight than the others, or where amplification is one of the criteria that you lower the threshold from 5 to 4 to make it a high-impact event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Are there questions, comments?
Sorry, I was just hoping that you could just give us a high-level summary of where the changes are and the highlights of the memo, please, for the public.
I think I can do that for you. No problem. As you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Joe McCray, Deputy City Manager and Interim Parks, Rec, and Community Services Director. As you all know, the current lakefront special event policy allows for 12 events throughout the year, with that season pretty much beginning or going fairly throughout the summer. The recommendations of the Park and Rec Board would allow for a total of 33 events. And that would be separated into the summer months, which would allow for 6 high-impact events and 10 low-impact events, which are included in your packet, a description of that. And then the non-summer events, which would be basically Labor Day through Memorial Day, which would be a total of 17 events, with 5 of those events being considered high-impact events and 12 of those events being considered low-impact events.
All right, Alderman Fisk.
Thank you. I have a question, Ms. McRae. Was there any discussion with the board about private entities like jet, what is it called, jet events or?
What page are you talking about?
One.
It just says both.
Yeah, so about private commercial event.
We did actually discuss the difference between nonprofit events and for-profit. As listed in the recommendations here, it would be a higher fee if your event is for-profit. And if it was a nonprofit, it's at a regular rate. It's an increased rate if it's a for-profit event. And I'm trying to find what the actual cost is. Fee-based events would, with event participants of 500 or more, require an additional permit cost. That cost has not been determined. That was something we were going to leave up to staff. And it could even be a percentage of those profits, too. Other communities do things that way when they have large special events that are held by for-profit companies. They have a large company coming in and they're going to be making money. The city sometimes takes a cut of that.
Right. I just have to say I don't feel comfortable with commercial entities coming and running events on our lakefront. I like the idea of our lakefront being used for our local organizations, and I just don't feel comfortable with the that type of commercial use on the lakefront.
We also struggled with races. If Ricky Birdsong, Race Against Hate, which is a event we all cherish in Evanston, if the YWCA decides to hire an outside firm to run it, is that a commercial? That's what we wanted to be also make sure that we didn't want to hamstring them not being able to do that and still have the race.
And I absolutely agree with you. If it's a local organization who just says, we can't handle this anymore, we need some outside help to come in. But where my concern is when we have a commercial, for-profit organization coming in saying, we want to have an event on Evanston's lakefront, and then go out and searching for whatever sponsoring organization they can find. I don't feel comfortable with that.
And I think the way we drafted this was it gives the city the ability to pick and choose. So our biggest concern was the limiting factor of the amount of current events and being able to broaden that to give greater access and more equity in the lakefront, because I think the board feels that the lakefront's an asset for all of Evanston, and it's a little limiting right now. So those are our recommendations.
Alderman Grover, and then Alderman Breathwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Rec Board for, I thought, a really thoughtful analysis of our lakefront policy and a great recommendation. I think we discussed when we allowed the Halloween hustle for this year, actually, our deliberations earlier this year, I think we reached the conclusion that those types of events don't generally happen without a for-profit entity that runs the event on behalf of somebody else, or these events wouldn't come our way without. Right. They just happen to be for-profit entities that stage events. That's the way these runs are managed. And that's why we let the Halloween hustle happen. And I think there was initial objection, but once it was explained that that's how these runs happen, it seemed to be just fine with everyone, including the council, when it went up to council for approval. So thank you to the Rec Board for putting this together for us, and it has my enthusiastic support.
Alderman Breathwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm also in support of this, but I just have a quick question. It would have been nice to have somewhat of an idea of just how many people each event has maybe held in the past. I'm just curious about the Rotary staff picnic. Just to guess at how many people are going to. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to.
Thank you.
Good evening, chair members. Bob Dorniker, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. For the Rotary event, they have approximately 300 people down there for that event.
Okay, that's a big picnic. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, yeah. Did we have a moving? Yeah, we had. I think we moved in second. It's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. H8, discussion of the Dempster Street beach boat rack policy. And I believe that's Mr. McRae and Mr. Dorniker.
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are bringing before you tonight for discussion the Dempster Street boat rack discussion. I believe this matter was forwarded to this committee by Alderman Burris. And so we provided with you today a report of how that process occurs currently, and also a breakdown of the fact that we have 293 boat racks currently, and approximately 257 of those go to Evanston residents, with the remainder going to non-Evanston residents. And so we bring that to you for discussion tonight, and I have with me Mr. Dorniker. Be happy to entertain questions.
Alderman Grover.
I think it turns out our predictions came true about if you build it, they will come. And we built better boat racks, and now there's demand for more. And I spent a lot of time at Dempster Beach this summer renting our boats, and it was great to see all the traffic on Dempster Beach. A lot of folks taken out for the first time, exploring paddleboards. Yeah, it's good. Great.
Alderman Burris.
Thank you, Mr. McRae, and thank you, Alderman Holmes, for bringing this to the attention of the committee. This came from a resident who was not able to secure a rack this year because non-residents were put in front of him. And so he would like the policy to be changed that residents would have first, I guess, priority on getting the racks, and then after all of those are given to residents, then the next group would be non-residents that have rented previously. So that's why this is before us. The second question is, has there been any more talk about having more boat racks?
Can I ask you a question? Do we know if it was a timing kind of thing for, you know?
He was actually in the, I think there's a boat rack lottery, and he was in the lottery.
That's correct. And at this point in time, I asked my assistant director, Bob Dorniker, to come to the microphone. Yes, there is a lottery for that. And there is a criteria broken down in the memo for how that lottery works and who goes first, and returning boaters, and then new Evanston residents, and then new non-Evanston residents. But
that is correct. In approximately February each year, the returning boaters have an option to reapply for their racks. We had a number of those return this year, including non-residents, and then after that process was finished, then we moved it to an open process where anyone could fill the open racks. We had approximately 26 individuals who were interested in the process that day, and unfortunately we did not have enough racks to fill for them to secure their boats.
And only, if I read right, I think it's on page 174, it said only Evanston residents filled the open spaces.
That is correct.
After the lottery
for
was done.
2013, that is correct. Yes.
Okay, all right. Alderman Grover?
Mr. Dorniker, do our rental fees cover the cost of building a new rack? How would they compare? The rack costs more than the rental
Rack
fees?
does cost.
How many years before we cover the cost of a...
It's quite some time, but the staff had some ideas recently on how we may be able to resolve those problems. So we would be willing to go back and work with the Parks and Rec Board to take a look at those ideas, as well as just some new options, which are probably a little bit less expensive than currently what we have down there, that would resolve some of the issues. We currently have about 40 paddleboard racks, which don't require the same size rack that we currently have down there.
Correct.
Which created some problems this year.
So in answer to Alderman Burris' other question, are there plans then for more racks?
That would be one of the suggestions, if possible.
Right.
Alderman Burris?
I believe when these recs were put in, I thought that the timeline was 3 to 4 years that they would pay for themselves. I don't exactly remember, but I believe it was about 4 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So, and the life of the racks are approximately?
We would hope that it would last at least 30 to 40 years. They're basically steel and.
So this sounds like an amazing return on our investment for racks that we put out, and they're within 3 to 4 years, they've completely paid for themselves. So
That's correct.
seems like a good idea.
Alderman
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you said 26 people were had applied after all the returning.
That's correct. And what's happened also is that we had the opportunity to install 2 temporary racks down there that we had actually had as sample racks during the initial boat ramp process when we were installing the other racks. So we were able to actually accommodate then 24 of those individuals back. So we sort of narrowed the pool of individuals that really just didn't have a rack to very few.
And those 26 were a mix of Evanston and non-Evanston?
Primarily, yes, that's correct.
Okay. It seems like an easy fix or an accommodation. I mean, I think in addition to more events along the lake and things that we've talked about, I think the other and more easily done thing are more amenities. You know, if we're talking about racks or lockers, beach umbrellas, well, you know, all these things I think are easy and make enjoyable experiences for our residents when they do go to the beach. And you know, there's no reason why you shouldn't pursue this. And I do favor getting more racks to accommodate, especially if we're Evanston residents.
Is there anything else? We don't need this. This was just a discussion item, so that's, unless anybody has any other comments or questions, we'll move on. Okay. Moving on to the Township of Evanston. And first is actually H1. We moved down to the Township. Who's our assessor? Assessor Wilson. And we will correct that from now on, Assessor. We'll have you always with the Township.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chairperson and members of the Human Services Committee. I'm Bonnie Wilson, Evanston Township Assessor. Gary Gaspard was with me also, Evanston Township Supervisor. We both want to, I'm going to start crying. We both want to say that the town of the city of Evanston was truly saddened to hear of the passing of Sharon Eccresall. We hope that the family will find courage and strength to bear this loss. We would like to send our deepest sympathy and condolences to the Eccresall family. This is from the Township Office of the Supervisor Gaspar, myself, and the staff of Evanston Township. I would also like to add that Gary and I were also looking forward to working with Sharon to help us on the 2014 budget, and we both feel very saddened about her loss. Okay, that's all. Since our last meeting, my office processed 2013 assessment appeals for 428 residents of Evanston taxpayers to the Cook County Board of Review. 2013 appeals are now closed for Evanston Township residents. Results from these appeals are expected in October. Taxpayers who live in zip code 60203 reside in Niles Township, and they can file an appeal now to the Cook County Assessor for their 2013 assessments. Appeals will be accepted through October 7th, 2013 for Niles Township. I would again like to remind everyone that a 2013 assessment that is lower than your 2012 assessment does not guarantee a lower dollar amount of taxes due in 2014. In August, my office helped 19 taxpayers receive corrections of property tax bills totaling $31,604. This brings the total dollar amount returned to taxpayers for the first 5 months of the fiscal year to $160,000. $1,344. Corrections can still be made for taxes going back to 2009, which were paid in 2010. If you think you have missed your exemptions or have never applied for your exemptions, please contact my office to see what exemptions were applied to your property taxes and what exemptions you may have missed. I'd like to announce that the Evanston Township Assessor's Office and the Evanston Township General Assistance Office, the Evanston Township offices, will be moving from our current location to Evanston Civic Center in room for the assessor's office. It's room 1450 on September 23rd, which this year, which is in a couple weeks. Our new phone number will be 847-448-8168, and we intend to be fully operational by September 25th. Additional, the current location of the office will be closed on September 19th and 20th in order to pack up and be moved. And Gary, Supervisor, do you want to tell them what your current, do you know your current phone number and your, what room you'll be in when we move?
Not exactly. Good evening. I don't have the current phone number with me, but we will pass it on to the press.
Okay.
Yes.
Both offices will be closed on the 19th and the 20th. I also want to mention that I just tonight saw the ordinance for the dissolving of Evanston Township. I understand that you're planning to vote tonight on the binding referendum question to discontinue and abolish Evanston Township on the ordinance. I want to make it perfectly clear that I do not approve of this referendum or this ordinance. I have worked hard these past 4 years to be an advocate for the taxpayers of Evanston. From the wording of the ordinance, there is no guarantee that this office will continue to be an advocate for the taxpayers of Evanston or for the General Assistance Program to help the citizens of this city. I feel strongly that the General Assistance and the Assessor's Office are providing excellent programs and services to the residents of Evanston, and I want to go on record that I am not supporting the abolishment of Evanston Township. I also want to mention that according to the ordinance, it doesn't mention that the city will be taking over the duties of the township. So I just want to make sure that's really clear, that if it is abolished, that the city will be taking over the duties of the township. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assessor Wilson. Next is the HHT9, the Township of Evanston's financial audit. And I think we all received that in the packet this weekend. Are there any questions? Anybody have any comments on the audit? If not, can we get I think we need a motion to accept it, I believe.
Move to accept the audit for the Evanston Township.
It's been moved in second. It's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Then next is HHT10, and that is the budget for fiscal year 2013. I believe that Mr. Gaspar, you and staff will come with that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Hi, good evening.
Valerie, Matt, Val?
Yes.
Matt? I have no comment. I have nobody sign up. Where? Okay, well, nobody brought it. We didn't get it.
Well, you started at 6 o'clock, your thing said 7, so it's 7 o'clock I found out.
No, it's, we did notice it for 6 o'clock. Okay. Okay. All right, let's hold on for 1 minute, Mr. Gaspar. And Clerk Green, you signed up on the guest, but come on, you signed up on the wrong sheet.
This is Rodney Green, citizen of 2016 Brown Avenue, and I have a couple of comments on the budget that's presented here tonight. Notice that, first of all, on the first sheet, I'm sorry, page 3 of the budget, it has the township organizational chart. As I noticed, this is there are 3 things missing from it. Number 1, the township clerk. If you do not have a township clerk for the township, then you have no one there to take the minutes or have a approved vow meeting for that township. According to the previous township organizational chart, there was a residence. I'll give you a copy of it. It shows the residence, the township clerk, then everyone else below that.
What page?
Point and example is that since on the 23rd, when you be talking about the township budget, I will not be here. So which means that the township clerk must get permission from the township board to appoint someone to be the temporary deputy for that night. If that doesn't happen, you cannot have a township board meeting to talk about township business, according to the book. Now, if this was a city council meeting, then the city manager could appoint a temporary city clerk, but because he's not on the township board, he cannot appoint a township clerk. And the only township clerk would be through the clerk himself, who appoints that person, but has got to get permission from the township board. The other thing that's on here is I noticed that in certain parts of the budget, on page 10, under work opportunity programs, it states that there are 2 options to the program: job training and workfare.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Clerk Green. Can you just tell us where we are on the council packet pages so we can keep up with you, sir?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, according to, I'm on, the first talk we talked about was page 3, which gives the organizational.
Which is page 254 for us.
Okay, see, I don't have the packet with me, I'm sorry. So page 10 of my book, which is talking about the work program. Okay?
Okay,
Can you
hold on
find
just
that?
1 minute. We got to find it.
All right.
He says on page 10.
It's
so
number
that was
10 that I have in my hand.
Page 261.
261. On the work opportunity program. You follow me in the middle of the page?
1 second, I'm getting there. You know, I'm a little slow. Okay, got you.
Okay. In the second sentence, there are 2 options to the program: job training and workfare. It says the clients are not on the GA because of medical inability to work must participate in either a direct work site placement or be involved in job club. Now, how can a person who is medically unable to work to be directed to work with a workplace med program or within the job club? I believe that people in that category are exempted. So they're not required to be in one of those 2 options. So I believe that that line should be stricken out and put exempted in its place. All right, you follow?
I hear you.
Okay.
I'm waiting to hear from staff.
Go on to page, I'm going for the budget line. First one. Yes. Down at the bottom. Yeah. Page 268 in the packet.
What?
268.
Okay.
It talks about the membership dues and SUBs. I noticed that there is no dollar amount given for 2013 for membership dues. Now, I do know that in the past that the trustees never went to any of the meetings that the township had except for one, Alderman Grover. but the dues have been paid for that. I'm wondering why the dues were eliminated from the budget for 2013. On the next page, 269, training seminars and conferences. I see that there's only allotted $2,000 for that, when if you're having 3 of the township folk going to any of the meetings or the seminars, it's going to be a lot more than $2,000 for traveling out of state, to Springfield.
Clerk Green, before you go any further, let me just simply say that this is just a budget that goes through December 31st. And so I would assume that dues and things may have already been paid last year that would have covered. I'm not sure, but it just makes sense to me. That, and the same thing with the conferences. I don't know how many conferences would be left between now and December for them to attend.
Okay.
So I would imagine that would be covered.
That's all paid
and that's
for.
just looking at.
Right. Okay. Okay, on the same page, if you go to glasses.
Glasses.
Yeah. There's no allocation for glasses. There are clients who do have to have glasses for whatever they're. And these clients are already wearing glasses. Now, I don't understand why you would take out the allocation for the glasses for the clients who, and also down at food assistance, where you have no food assistance for 2013 as well. And my last point is sorry.
And could I just ask staff to respond to this? But as I'm looking at it, if I'm understanding correctly, we're already over on the glasses by $1,000. At least that is what it might look like to me. I might be wrong, because $1,000 savings. Oh, okay. No, because I was looking that you had it here in the budget at 2013, which would really began last, for you guys, it began in April, is that correct? So I was assuming that you had spent some already for that. April 1. April 1.
Can't find that one.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, if I could, our Assistant City Manager, Chief Financial Officer has a comment.
Thank you. Mr. Lyons.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Just remember, in reading this, it is still a fiscal year, so 1213 refers to April 1st, 2012 through March 31st, 2013. So that's the prior year. And then we're going to start April 1st of this year and end the 31st of this year. So in the case of the glasses, again, those could be an order that always shows up in February. And so that's pushed out into the next year, not going to show up in this year because it hasn't shown up yet to date, and maybe it won't show up until year end. That's just a supposition. One other thing would be if the township does do more of a line item budget, should you be in a situation where they need to have changes, they can come back to you to say, we'd like to amend on a line item basis. So again, you're going to give a total authority, also a line item authority in this case, whereas the city does it by fund.
Right. And that's why I was making the point of the budget is only going to go to December 31st because of the way in which we've not been able to pass a budget, which we should have done in June, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? All right. Okay. Any more questions, Ms. Clerk Green? So you're asking us now that we need to give you permission to appoint a clerk?
Yeah,
is that what I heard?
The township board has to give me permission to appoint a township deputy clerk in my absence. But as a township board.
Okay. Alderman Grover has a question.
Given that we're not going to meet as a township board until next Monday, right, to deliberate the budget, could you make a recommendation to us, and could we do it the same night?
Yes, I can do that.
Can we do that? And so you would recommend to us your substitute for next Monday night's meeting, and then we could do it next Monday night as a township board, is simply appoint a township clerk for that meeting?
Yes, as a recommendation from the township clerk, yes.
And who's your recommendation, Mr. Clerk?
I haven't thought of that yet.
All right.
I'll put that in a memo to everyone.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay. Did I see another? I guess I didn't see another light. Okay, thank you. We have Miss Esther, Miss Giles, and Mr. Cree. I'm sorry. And we didn't go back out and pick these up because we didn't know it was there. Sorry.
Good evening. My name is Betty Esther. I stay at 2031 Church Street here in Evanston, and I am a registered voter. To the township, all of the issues in the township, I read the township audit. I looked at the township budget. One question that was raised by staff at the last meeting, which was when you presented the budget for the end of the year, was that the amount that was presented kind of was different from what they had for the budget ending that would have ended on March the 31st to take them to the end of the year. And now I hear, okay, some items don't have numbers, and as Mr. Lyons stated, that you come back. Could we make a budget or fix it so that they don't have to come back and be standing here and people always see us coming back to fix something? The other thing in dealing with the ordinance to dissolve the township, and I had asked before when the Board of Trustees was going to have a community discussion about the NOVA consulting group, the report that they did on the Evanston Township efficiency assessment. Did not get an answer. Nobody talked about that discussion, what it showed, what it did not show. Interesting, and I think it need to be a community discussion, because we are finna make a decision. You're finna put out to all the voters and everybody to make a decision about a program that helps those that are less able to really express themselves maybe, or fight for themselves, and they need others' help. Every time that something happens in this country, the ones that pays the cost are the ones at the lower level, which is the people in poverty. For once in our life, can we do something where we are not hurting people in poverty? The township program, as the state says, is for individuals who are not eligible for any other state program. That covers a wide range of people. Then we have the emergency assistance program that the city ran. Then they gave it over to the county, over to the Evanston Township, and the township ran it, and it helped people, families, individuals with food, medical, all kinds of assistance. Now we are talking about doing away with this program. And I want to thank Cecil Bunny Wilson for pointing out, I missed that there's nothing in that ordinance says that you're going to do anything for the poor people, in which, unfortunately, I'm one of them. I'm a little a little not as poor as the lowest, but up there. But we're in that category, and we never know when we're going to reach that point that you're going to need that assistance. Let us have something there that the people can count on. They have been counting on for a very long time. One of the recommendations you talk about, and Clerk Green talked about, the workforce. Before, the township did their own workforce, their training, their work program and everything. They had it in-house. And then it was voted out, and so they started taking it out to people at the other different agencies and things. Why do we always try to fix things when they don't need fixing? So I'm asking that at least we paid $17,000 plus for this report. I think that you should at least discuss it so that the public can get your opinion on it. Because like on page 3, page 4, page 10, which Assessor Lex Sheridan Eccles pointed out, because it was talking about the Township Assessor's Office, that office needed to be there, and the city did not have any department that did anything to that effect or even to staff to work that. You have page 12, which deal with the benchmark, and then it says, in the case of the GA administration and taxpayer assessors, Evanston is compatible to the other township. These townships...
Ms. Esther, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up. I've already given you over 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay.
These township was the township that the city manager told the Noble people to compare Evanston to. It was Mainship Township, Now Township, New Trier Township, and Oak Park Township. Read this. Talk about it, because I can't understand. After you have read these pages, I have read them twice to make sure I understand what they're saying, that you can be sitting here tonight voting to dissolve something where it tells you that the city does not have no duplication of service, and there is nothing distinctly that the city have that is compared to what the township does. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Giles?
My name is Priscilla Giles. I know you're tired of seeing me back up here again, but there are 9 people voting to deny, over 200 people. I'm not sure of the exact numbers that you said, but over 200 people, services provided by the Township Office of Evanston, which the City Council, the same 9 people, plan to abolish. I would like for the language used on this referendum to be simple language that everyone can understand, unlike the language that was used in the last referendum, which was vague and misleading. And I still remember, I hope you haven't forgotten, that Foster or Fleetwood is not handicap accessible for people who want to enter. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cree?
Hello, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Madeline Dupree. Okay, in May, I believe Senator Daniel Biss followed up and sponsored this Public Act bill in Springfield. And on August 2nd, as we know, Governor Pat Quinn signed it. I believe in changes. I encourage changes in the township program that will benefit people in a positive way and at the same time serve their needs. I think most people know that I do not believe in these changes going to the city, but I do believe that the people need to know in depth what the city is going to do, how the city is going to do with the township. We need to know this. We need to know the city plans in order that we can make an intelligent decision and vote for those who haven't made up their minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, that concludes comments on the township. So we now go back to the budget. Are there any questions on the budget that's presented? Do you need a summary from the staff? What would you like? Alderman Burris.
It's really just a question. Under medical expenses, does that include dental assistance or just medical?
Just medical. Alderman Grover.
So to kind of recap, what we did not do in June was pass the budget. So we held the current budget through to this point in time, and what we're left with really is about 3 months left in this fiscal year budget that we're looking to approve tonight. And then we'll be revisiting then a budget for the new fiscal year at a separate time. So it's really just what's left of this fiscal year, we're looking to approve the budget. It looks like most of the expenses have already been incurred, such as, important to all of us, the community purchase services. Those allocations have already been made to the same agencies as previous years in the same amounts. So do we have a motion?
I would look for one that's.
Move approval of the budget.
Is there a second?
For fiscal year 2013 for our township.
Okay. It's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's 4-1. Okay. All right. Very good. Now, I don't know the timeline. Then we'll start working on the 2014 budget.
Good evening.
I just don't want to have this problem again next year. So,
members of the committee, it is the fiscal year 14 calendar, the temporary. It'll be introduced approximately at the same time as the city council, October 11th, as well as the library.
So you'll be working on that with the staff. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, now HT 11. We're almost there, guys. Just hold in a little bit more time. This is the 2T-0-13, an ordinance calling for the binding referendum question to be submitted to the electors of Evanston Township to discontinue and abolish the township organization in Evanston Township. Alderman Grover, Alderman Tindon, and then we'll ask the city manager to speak to it.
And beat me to the button.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And if Mr. Bobkowitz has more introduction to this agenda item, might be helpful.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, just a clarifying point. The ordinance that you have setting the election is largely dictated to us by the statute that was passed by the Illinois General Assembly. The questions regarding the city's intentions moving forward, those questions have been answered by the Illinois General Assembly. They have directed that if this initiative were to pass, those functions become the responsibility of the city of Evanston. So the reason it is not included here is because it is included in the statute, the state statute. So just that was raised by a number of the speakers. I just want to make that clarifying point.
Okay. Alderman Tindon first, and then Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a question. I just wanted to echo what Ms. DeCree said about having a plan in place for doing this. I do favor the dissolution of the township, but that was with the understanding that the public know what we're going to follow up with in terms of both general assistance and assessor services, exactly where they stand if and when this is put into law. So I think hopefully some of this will be more clear as the township is planning to move their offices to the city. But I think it's really imperative that people understand how these services will be continued.
Okay. Alderman Grover.
Kind of the same vein. I'm supportive of dissolution of the township, but only if we have a plan for continuation of what seems to me to be kind of last-ditch support and assistance, our general assistance, emergency assistance, and taxpayer advocacy services. So,
okay, I hear you, and I am not in support of abolishing the township. I never have been, and I continue on that vein. And I would certainly, if it, I'm sure we'll vote tonight and pass it on up to the council, and I'll state this at the council when we're there. I would certainly think that it would be responsible for us. We would be responsible trustees if we would then have some kind of public meetings to educate all of the voters in terms of what this really means. So that would be the one thing that I would ask of my colleagues to do as trustees when this passes, I'll put it like that. Alderman Breathwaite.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes. As well, thank you, the folks that came out from the community to speak up and ask the questions. I too, I'm not in support of this, and it's not because of not wanting more efficiency, but for my 3 years that I've been on council, anytime we make a major move, there's a plan in place. And so I struggle with this decision. I struggle with the decision from my other colleagues who, particularly after we've been through this recently, whether it's Harley Clark or the Safe School Zone, we find ourselves under much criticism from our community. And I feel, and I don't say this with no apologies, that when it comes to those with less resources or black, we don't listen with the same sensitivity. And it's really, really, really painful. And so I think that's important that you hear that, because I have yet to partake in any discussion with those affected, and I've always advocated for particularly the clients who are served to ask how they feel about it and what their thoughts are. And so all I can say, along with Alderman Holmes, is I'm not in support, and I think it's very irresponsible to move this forward without that discussion.
He hasn't graduated from high school. John is placed in A, B, E, or GED. Let's say John has a history of mental illness. John is connected to a mental health agency, a la PEER or Behavioral Services Center. Let's say John has a history of substance abuse or dependence. John is placed in counseling. What needs to be understood is that the goal of the general assistance client is to get them job ready. So that's assessed when they come and sit down in my office. And if they are not job ready, there is a process to move him along. If they are deemed job ready, which the criteria is, he is psychologically stable, he at least is literate, he has a high school diploma, and he is then placed in either Job Club, which is an active, ongoing curriculum for 6 weeks, and we meet with them, I meet with them 3 times a week, 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and get them prepared for the workforce. That involves resume building, cover letters, interviewing on camera. So that group goes on for 6 weeks, and then another group comes in that is deemed work ready. There are particular sites in Evanston who will take on clients for work training, which are our work sites. So then another part of the assessment process is to find out if this client is quote unquote work ready and can participate in the work site. I've sent plenty over here to Cheryl in HR. So that's a piece of the work opportunity program. That's a piece by which the general assistance client operates. And then there's a compliance issue, because I have to stay in compliance with what is known as my Bible, the Township Code or the Township Officials of Illinois Handbook. In that handbook, there are compliances around, in terms of the law, around deadlines. So from the time that John first came in, I have to see John in 30 days to sit him down, maybe put him on GA, and assess his needs. Now, John is now getting, the monthly grant is $500. If he has a landlord in Evanston that will take $200 for him to live, the landlord gets $200, and John gets $300, $150 at a time, twice a month. There are also other barriers with these clients, as I would say, and this is a guesstimate, probably 35% of them are homeless. The GA Township handbooks requires that they just have an address to receive mail. And Connections for the Homeless, where I was a program coordinator, allows homeless clients to use that address as a mailing address so they can receive mail for notices. So that client, based on the handbook, as long as he has intention of remaining in Evanston, he is eligible for GA. Now you have the client who also, I gotta give you more of this, there's the client who has a place to live. Upon me finishing assessing him originally, now I have to go out and confirm that he lives where he says he lives. So there is even a home visit component to this. If he tells me he lives at 123 Darrow, I have to go to 123 Darrow and make sure he's there. There is a landlord form notarized by that landlord. There's a W-9 form because that landlord wants to receive rent from the township. All of those, and I'm just giving you instances of the nuts and bolts of that's just one case. Now, for him to remain eligible, there is a 6-month ongoing recertification process. So now you have to continue to monitor that client to see his movement. He will come into the office periodically for whatever service he needs. Maybe he has medical issues. We will buy his medicine. Maybe tomorrow he'll come in and, like we just had with a client, her mother died, and we'll have to do crisis intervention. Maybe the next day a client will come in and he's opiate dependent, and he wants to go to treatment and be detoxed. I have to find somewhere to send him. So then you have the client who comes in and he is pending disability. That is the exempt client who is not, as the clerk was talking about, is not required to look for work because he is pending disability. When he receives the disability, he comes off of GA. Upon me finding out he's on disability, there has to be a form signed, sent to Social Security and sent to DHS, because when he's approved, we recoup all that money that we gave him. They send us a lump sum check back to the township. So that client is placed on exempt status. So what I have just kind of done is just went through various scenarios of what could happen with just one client. Well, I have 160 that are active, and I am the lone qualified mental health professional there and case manager. I've been in social services 30 years. 160 clients is a massive amount of clients. Mm-hmm. I have to add this just for the record. There are 2 files kept on every client. There's an electronic file and there's a hard copy file. Both of those files have to be maintained based on compliances, documented in, I's dotted, T's crossed. Today as we speak, there are 160 active and there are 28 in the wings waiting to get on who are out of compliance. Those files have clearly been sitting there on my desk longer than 30 days because I don't have I don't have the capacity to do it based on me being one person. It's impossible.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say this, that I think maybe for the first time, maybe some of the folk are hearing, that's just one population of the township that's served. There are other people who use township. You're talking about general assistance. There are other pieces to this. So when we talk about numbers, the only thing we ever hear about is the caseload that is carried. Well, but that's numbers, and that's why I think for the last couple of years it's been about 100 and something. It wasn't up to 150. 150 this year is the largest that we've heard for a while. And so people zero in on that number. So I'm really glad that you brought out tonight that there are other numbers, and in terms of what you would see during the course of a year. So I just wanted to
just kind of complete. That is just GA alone.
That's just GA alone, that's right.
There is an emergency assistance component coming out of that office. There is an ABE component coming out of that office. I am a state certified counselor, board registered MISA counselor, and there are clients there that are mentally ill.
Right.
Access 1, Access 2, psychotropic meds, etc. So I guess what I'm saying is it's more than just a distribution of a benefit.
Right. And I think Alderman Burris is asking to see those numbers, and that I think you all can produce for us. I have two lights, Alderman Brathwaite and then Alderman Grover.
Thank you. First, thank you for sharing that and just making us all present to what the day-to-day life looks like. And Alderman Holmes, and I was going to follow up on Alderman Burris's question. I think it's an excellent question. I think as we go through this process, we'll get more information. So I hope to follow up on Alderman Grover and Alderman Tendem that if you do hear something or don't see a clear plan, that we do a course correct. Just so we're clear, we're asking for the total number of clients impacted in a year. I think that would include that comes through the doors, that you may assist and refer to other agencies that you don't necessarily put on your books. So those are the numbers that we're trying to get a handle of. And
we're going to give you emergency assistance numbers as well as the GA numbers.
Everything that the township serves. Everything that the township serves, and not just GA.
Yeah. With the exception, of course, of the organizations that you fund and their folks, but the people that come through your doors are the numbers that we're trying to capture. I think we do have a number on the number of residents who utilize the tax services through the assessor's side
we do have that.
of the business. And it's safe to say that everyone that goes through the assessor's office may or may not get helped, but they still record those numbers. And I think it's important for you to capture your numbers as well. Fair enough? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Mr. Colquitt, for probably the best explanation this committee's heard about the day-to-day, what's on your desk every day, who walks through your door every day. So much appreciated. And I think, as Alderman Holmes said, we've only seen, since I've been on the council, the numbers tick up. It seems to have hovered around 99, 100 current caseload for the first 2.5 years, I think, that I served as town trustee, and it's only been in the last 18 months that it's ticked steadily upward, the caseload, the number of clients. And so it's not just the caseload, it is the services that are provided through our general assistance program that are so important. Given the March 2014 election schedule, I think that's what brings the ordinance to the committee tonight, and the need to move it on to council. Just thinking ahead to the March election schedule, and this would be just the first step. And I envision that there will be a number of steps in this process, and among them, I hope and assume, will be meetings with residents, meetings with the community to discuss how we plan on providing and replacing general assistance services if we dissolve a township. Because many of us considered these as core services in our community, and the City Council, please remember, made our at-risk families one of our programmatic priorities in our recent strategy session. And I think the kinds of services provided through general and emergency assistance are exactly for those residents. So I want to move this on to council just because I think it's just the first step in the evolution that began a couple of years ago with the non-binding referendum. But part of this will be development of a plan for how we provide these essential services.
A motion?
I think there was a motion and a second already.
Okay.
Am
I didn't get it, if so. Okay. You went, I didn't get it.
I thought Alderman Tendem had done that. I'll move ordinance 2T013 for a binding referendum question to be submitted to the electors of Evanston Township to discontinue and abolish the township organization in Evanston.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Noes? No. So it's
4-2.
4-2. Okay. All right, communications, we have the township memo in terms of regarding day-to-day staff duties. I had asked the staff to talk about the day-to-day duties in terms of what spurred my question was the elimination of the executive director, and how were those duties being picked up. And so I asked for a job description so I could begin to see how that was being done currently and how we intended to address some of those issues. Because if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the former executive director was also an MSW and did some of the counseling with some of the GA clients. So that helped then with some of the caseload. So now that's why all of that is falling on our current staff person, and I understand that. So that's why we have all these materials. And if anybody wants to know, I was just trying to get, okay. All right. And then you have the elected officials job, the descriptions, and Ms. Weidman was kind enough to put it in our packet, but we also had it in the township booklet. So I don't know if anybody's had a chance to look at it yet, but if not, and so that we can all understand and see what those responsibilities are for every one of us in terms of that. And I thought it very helpful, so thank you very much for providing that. Okay. And then are there any questions or any comments? Or is there anything staff wanted to say? Did Supervisor Gasper, did you want to make any comments or anything? I don't want to overlook anyone. No? Okay, Matt, are we clear? Okay, all right, great. Thank you. Okay, then moving on to communications, we have a change of staff memo. And that's, I think, our deputy director. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alderman. I didn't see, who's quicker or slow to draw this time? See, the lights going. Okay, Alderman Grover and Alderman Tindall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to take this opportunity to thank Ms. White for her years of service to the Human Services Committee. It's been a pleasure to sit up here with you, and thank you very much. And enjoy your Monday evenings once a month.
What will you do? Thank you. Some of these meetings have been very somewhat heated and never all that straightforward. Sometimes it's complicated. And when I've chaired this committee, you've been so much help to me, and I really truly appreciate it, and look forward to working with you in another capacity.
Fantastic. Yes, we certainly will miss her and thank her very much. And then what I'd like to do also is, are you going to do that? I was just going to ask Melissa. Yeah, if Melissa, would you stand, and so the rest of I don't know if everybody's met you yet or not, but the rest of the committee, this will be our new staff person. And I told Melissa tonight, I hardly remember first names, but I certainly don't remember last ones. But Melissa's going to be our new staff person. Okay. Okay. Is there anything else? Mr. McRae, are we done?
I have no more report.
All right. Is there a motion? Absolutely. Thank you very much.